Well, shalom, shalom. Welcome, welcome, world changers. Tonight is going to be an interesting night. We're going to be talking about the shape of the earth as we have been doing on Sunday nights. And I'm going to be bringing up some of Maimonides' works, as well as talking about the creation story and showing you some video footage that you can pull up yourself on and watch it on the internet. So anyways, welcome. Any of you know of anybody that would be interested in watching something like this, make sure you shoot them a message and share the live stream. And so in the live chat, we have Calamentos says, shalom, everyone. Shalom, Calamentos. Welcome, blessings. Stephen says, shalom. Shalom, Stephen. Good to see you. Blessings. Psalm 94 says, shalom, everyone. Billy says, shalom. Seek the Lord says, shalom, 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 shalom. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to start out with a couple comments that I've received on some videos, and then we're going to go into pulling out one of Maimonides, and we'll talk about who he is and when he lived and all that kind of thing as well. So anyways, okay, I believe this was on another video that I posted not too long ago in regards to this whole particular subject. And Willie Will, apparently he doesn't agree with me. And you know how it goes. If someone believes a lie, to them the truth is a lie, and a lie is truth to them, right? So anyways, Willie Will says, you're fighting the truth, brother. Oh, you're almost there. Yeah, you're going to get there faster than it was to realize who Paul was. First of all, what do you mean realize who Paul was? I'm not sure what you think I think about Paul, but a lot of people get me wrong on that, by the way. Anyways, you've been lied to by NASA. Okay. It always comes down to this, right? Always. I have never, ever appealed to the authority of NASA. I have never, ever showed any pictures or videos as evidence from NASA. In fact, NASA is not even my space agency. To me, it's got nothing to do with NASA. Nothing to do with NASA. People knew what the shape of the earth was for thousands of years before NASA was even a thought. Okay, so it's almost like blaming Henry Ford for the wheel. You know, it's like, a little bit off the mark there for sure. But you always got a lot of these flat earthers that are so obsessed about NASA. To me, NASA doesn't matter. NASA didn't exist, it wouldn't change a thing. You've been lied to by NASA, even by your governor. I'm sorry. Again, we have a lot of assumptions that are just in one comment. First of all, the assumption is that I am fighting the truth, which is not true. Okay. Then the assumption that I'm getting there faster than it was to realize who Paul was, getting where faster. The more and more I see this whole thing about what Flurfs have to say about their idea of the shape of the earth, the more and more I'm just face palming and saying, what in the world's what's wrong with you guys? I see more and more evidence to the contrary. So that's not true. And then there's the assumption that somehow I have realized who Paul was. Again, another assumption. You've been lied to by NASA. As far as I know, NASA, what did NASA tell me? Even by your governor. Well, again, there's another assumption there because I'm not even in the States. Okay, so I don't have a governor. Okay. Okay, so anyways, keep pressing on. You'll figure it out. Well, I am keeping on pressing on for sure. I'm always pressing on for sure. I think we should always be in the attitude of learning more as we go, and it's definitely a journey of learning. We all are in that journey of learning. Amen. Okay, so there's a short video I posted not too long ago called "Just Because You Don't Understand It Doesn't Mean It's Not True." Okay. And I do believe that's a fact. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's not true. The personal incredulity fallacy. A lot of people, just because they don't understand it, they think it's not true. Because to them, it's like, they don't say it this way, but they imply it like they know all truth. It's like there's nothing that's true. Like if it's true, I would understand it because I know truth. Well, I think we should be a little bit more on the humble side and say, you know what? There's a lot we don't know, and just because I don't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. This is an unspoken thing by a lot of people. It's like, if I don't understand it, it can't be true because I understand all truth. Stephen says, the plumb line test settled it for me. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Yes, that's an awesome thing. Just for those of you who you don't know what Stephen is talking about, actually we have more than one surveyor that you'll find on the internet that has done this. They've measured a plumb line in one spot, then they go so many hundred or so many thousand feet and go down and measure a plumb line in the other spot, and then measure the angle. If it's actually parallel or not, and it's not. It's not. They're not parallel because down. Because for those of you who are not familiar with this kind of terminology, a plumb line is a line. Like if you were to tie a pendulum on the end of a string and just hold it there until it stops moving, that's a plumb line. Straight down. Straight down. So straight down is towards the very core of the earth. So if you have a sphere, straight down over here is on a little bit a different angle than straight down over here. So you got the top, you get plumb lines, which are straight up, but they are angled outward because we're all pulled towards the core of the earth. It's all relative, right? It's all relative. A lot of people don't understand that. If you're facing the window in your apartment or in your house or wherever you are, you're facing the window. Okay, this is, your right hand, and then you have your left hand. If you turn around and put your back to the window, your right hand is still your right hand. Your left hand is still your left hand. It's relative. Okay. It seems like some people just don't quite understand that. They don't quite grasp that. So, yeah, just because you don't understand it, that was my point. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. A lot of people, it's hard for them to even recognize the fact that they don't understand something. They think they understand it when they don't. Or they know they don't understand it, but they just ignore the fact that they don't understand it, and they don't want to admit to themselves that it's like they just ignore it. I think that we should be honest enough with ourselves and with everyone else to say, if I don't understand it, I don't really understand it. You better just, get educated and try to understand it. That's the best way to do it. So on that video, you don't understand it, we have Stephen here that left a comment. 1,000 years ago, everybody knew the earth was the center of the universe. These kind of blanket statements, I'm kind of hesitant about. I wouldn't say that because it's just like saying, well, everybody's got a Bible. Well, what do you mean by everybody? Universal, absolute sense, and everybody in the entire world? No, they don't. So 1,000 years ago, everyone knew the earth was the center of the universe. I would say that there were people who believed that. I don't know if I would say everyone knew that. People that believe that. And again, how do you define that? You mean center of the universe, relatively speaking, or on in an objective or absolute sense? It's different ways of looking at it. And then Stephen says, apparently quoting Tommy Lee Jones, 500 years ago, they knew the earth was flat. Absolutely not true. And I have proven that over and over and over again all the time, bringing up Jusinius, where he says that the coog of the earth in Isaiah 40:22. It's in the King James, I believe it's translated circle. There are other Bible translations that translate it as sphere or globe, or to something to that effect. And Jusinius, Hebrew, one of the foremost Hebrew authorities of the scriptures, he says, and in his own writings. And this is like 100 years before NASA. Talk about NASA. 100 years before NASA was ever even a thought. Jusinius was alive, and he wrote that word "kug" means sphere. Okay, what he said, circle, comma, sphere is what he said. I've shown that many times. And by the way, the word world too. Many times when you read through the scriptures and you read the word world, according to Jusinius, again, lived in the 1700s, into the 1800s, 100 years before NASA, he said that word world means the inhabitable globe. Last week, we read Pliny the Elder's writings from 2,000 years ago, approximately 2,000 years ago. I have to say approximately because some people are so picky when it comes to everything I say. Well, it's not 2,000 years ago, it's 1,999 and a half years ago, or it's 2,001 years ago. Okay, approximately 2,000 years ago, I'll put it that way. Approximately 2,000 years ago, we have Pliny the Elder, who wrote arguably the first encyclopedia, and in that he made it very clear the earth is a globe, and he made it like everybody knows that the earth is a globe. It wasn't a question, it was just common knowledge 2,000 years ago. So yeah, 500 years ago they knew the earth was flat. Maybe somebody thought that the earth was flat back those days, but again, a sweeping statement like that is not true. At least not in an absolute universal sense. Like everybody knew the earth was flat. No, well, probably some people that were not very educated in the matter, they probably thought that it was. But commonly believed and known to be spherical. And I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit when it comes to Maimonides. Maimonides, he lived in the 12th century, 800 and some odd years ago. I'll give you a little hint of what he said the shape of the earth is. Actually, I'm not going to give you a hint. I'm pretty sure you know. I'm pretty sure you know what Maimonides would say. He would say what everybody else said. Okay, but I'll show you. You guys. So get your nifty little pen out or your digital, whatever you want, and taking digital notes because I'll show you some things. So, and then, yeah, so I'm not sure, Stephen, why you would quote this because it's just, it's vastly, we got point after point here that's not true. I'm not sure what your point is in quoting that. Okay. Speaking of Maimonides, let's talk about him, and then I'll show you some quotes from him. A little bit later, Hannah's going to come on, and she is going to give us some live music. That's not going to be right away, but that's going to be in a little bit. Okay, so Maimonides is kind of like a what would you say? A nickname, probably a name. A lot of people know him as Rambam. Okay, and so Rambam Maimonides lived. As I mentioned before, he lived in the 12th century. Okay, he was born approximately 1138 AD, and he passed away in 1204, approximately. They say. His full real name was Moshe ben Maimon. Okay, so he was a very prolific. If you do a search for the top Jewish scholars in history, he might be the first one that would pop up. I wouldn't doubt he's the first one to pop up. He is very well known for his knowledge of the scriptures. And his education in Hebrew and all that kind of thing. So he is one of the foremost authorities when it comes to the Tanakh, the quote-unquote Old Testament, the translation and interpretation of the scriptures. So he lived 800 and some odd years ago. Of course, he didn't have all the information that we have today, so he's not really up to date, but he certainly did have enough information to make it very interesting. Now, let me just show you here see if I can pull this up. I'll show you. He wrote a lot. He was a prolific author. Okay, and this is probably one of the reasons why he gained so much notoriety, because of his writings. One of the many books that he wrote was a book called The Guide for the Perplexed. A very it's like about 600 pages. And that's just one thing he wrote. So in there, he mentions he spoke about the earth. Let me show you what he said. Keep in mind, this is like over 800 years ago. Okay, over 800 years ago. He wasn't deceived by NASA. Okay, this is way before America was ever even known, or was ever even born. Okay, 800 plus years ago. So let me pull this up. Okay, so this is from page 234 in his work called The Guide for the Perplexed, the 10th proposition. Okay, so this is what Maimonides says. I'll start with here. This proposition concerns the theory of admissibility, which is mentioned by the Mutakalimim and forms the principal support of their doctrine. Mark its purport. They observe that everything conceived by the imagination is admitted by the intellect as possible. Example, that the terrestrial globe, of course this is referring to the earth, should become an all-encompassing sphere, or that the sphere should become the terrestrial globe. Reason does not find here an impossibility, or that the sphere of fire should move towards the center and the sphere of earth towards the circumference. Human intellect does not perceive any reason why a body should be in a certain place instead of being in another. In the same manner, they say that reason admits the possibility that an existing being should be larger or smaller than it really is, or that it should be different in form and position from what it really is. For example, a man might have the height of a mountain, might have several heads and fly in the air, or an elephant might be as small as an insect, or an insect as huge as an elephant. This method of admitting possibilities is applied to the whole universe. Wherever they affirm that a thing belongs to this class of admitted possibilities, they say that it can have this form, and that this is also possible that it be found differently, and that the one form is not more possible than the other. But they do not ask whether the reality confirms their assumption. They say that the thing which exists with certain constant and permanent forms, dimensions, and properties only follows the direction of habit, just as the king generally rides on horseback through the streets of the city and is never found departing from his habit, but reason does not find it impossible that he should walk on foot through the place. There is no doubt that he may do so, and this possibility is fully admitted by the intellect. So anyways, without going on too much here, we see here, this is our first clue that Maimonides certainly believed that the earth was a sphere. Now let's go on to, we have here, this is page 237. Okay, this would be chapter 73 of the same book. So Maimonides says, hear what profit we derive from the preliminary disciplines, and how excellent the propositions are which we learn through them. Just give me a second here, see if I can pull this out a little more. Okay. Know that there are certain things which would appear impossible if tested by man's imagination. keep in mind here, let me just say this. Keep in mind here, when I was reading this, it's like I'm thinking about how a lot of people who believe that the earth is flat, they rely on their imagination according to this particular context in which Maimonides is writing. So let's continue. So again, know that there are certain things which would appear impossible if tested by man's imagination, being as inconceivable as the coexistence of two opposite properties in one object. Yet the existence of those same things which cannot be represented by imagination is nevertheless established by proof and attested by their reality. For example, imagine a large globe of any magnitude you like, even as large as the all-encompassing sphere. Further, an axis passing through the center, and two persons standing on the two extremities of the axis in such a manner as their feet are in the same straight line with the axis, which may either be in the plane of the horizon or not. In the first case, both persons would fall. In the second case, namely, the one who stands on the lower extremity would fall, and the other would remain standing. As far as our imagination can perceive, it has, however, already been proved that the earth has the form of a globe, that it is inhabited on both extremities of a certain diameter, and both the inhabitants have their heads towards the heaven and their legs towards each other, and yet neither can possibly fall. Nor can it be imagined, for it is incorrect to say that the one extremity is above and the other below. Okay, so what's he saying here? It's incorrect to say that to one person he's hanging off the bottom, because he's not really hanging off the bottom. To him, bottom is towards the center of the sphere, and up is away from the center, or away from the core of the sphere. This is what Maimonides is getting at here. So he says, but the term above and below apply to both of them as regards to their relative position to each other. Okay? So in other words, above to one person is not the same above, doesn't mean the same direction per se as above to the other person. It's relative to each person, to each of the subjects. As I said before, you can be facing one way. You got your right hand, you got your left hand. You turn around, you do 180. Your right hand is still on the your right hand, it doesn't become your left hand, because it's relative to you. Okay, so this is what Maimonides is basically saying here. Similarly, it has been proved in the second chapter of the book on conic sections that two lines, which at first are a certain distance from each other, may approach each other in the same proportion as they are produced further, and yet would never meet, even if they produced to infinity, although they are observed to be constantly converging. In other words, they look like they're converging, but they're not. This is a fact which cannot easily be conceived. Again, here's the idea of, if you don't understand it, it doesn't mean it's not true. If you can't imagine it, it doesn't mean it's not true. Truth goes further than our finite minds. Truth goes further than our finite little human minds. And it's proven by our measurements and doing the math. Okay, so it says, this is a fact which cannot easily be conceived, and which does not come within the scope of imagination. Of these two lines, the one is straight, the other curved, as stated in the aforementioned book. It has consequently been proved that things which cannot be perceived or imagined, and which would be found impossible if tested solely by imagination, are nevertheless in real existence. So he's saying basically what I was saying, even though you can't imagine it, doesn't mean it's not true. Just because you cannot get it through your thick skull doesn't mean that it's not real. Okay? The non-existence of things which are present by imagination as possible has likewise been established by proof. For example, the corporeality of God and his existence as a force residing in a body. Imagination perceives nothing except bodies, or perhaps inherent in bodies. Okay, going to another passage here. This is page 426. Again, we have Maimonides talking about the stars and the globe of the earth. Okay, so Maimonides is he's very explicit here in what he believes that the shape of the earth is. Okay, if you meet Maimonides in heaven, and now I'm talking to a flat earther now, if a flat earther meets Maimonides in heaven, what are they going to say? Hey, you've been lied to by NASA? I want to be there because I'll be rolling in laughter all over the streets of gold. Okay, I'll be rolling. Okay, so because it's people are just so deceived. People are just so deceived, thinking it has something to do with NASA. It's got nothing to do with NASA at all. Okay. Back to here. So again, this is Maimonides from 800 plus years ago. He said the earth is a globe. All right. Going on to chapter 29, page 333. Maimonides says, if we hear a person speaking whose language we do not understand, we undoubtedly know that he speaks, but do not know what his words mean. It may even happen that we hear some words which mean one thing in one tongue of the speaker and exactly the reverse in our language. And taking the words in the sense which they have in our language, we imagine that the speaker employed them in that sense. Okay? It says here, suppose, for example, an Arab hears of a Hebrew the word Abba. He thinks that the Hebrew relates how a man despised and refused a certain thing, while the Hebrew in reality says that the man was pleased and satisfied with it. Okay? What's Maimonides trying to say here? You can easily misunderstand somebody or misinterpret a word, especially, he's just talking about two different languages, let alone two different cultures in two different parts of the world, 2,000, 3,000 years removed from the fact. Okay? The very same thing happens to the ordinary reader of the prophets. Some of their words some of their words he does not understand at all. Like those to whom the prophet says in Isaiah 29 verse 11, the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed. In other passages, he finds the opposite or the reverse of what that prophet meant. To this case, reference is made in the words, quote, you have perverted the words of the living God, unquote. And that's Jeremiah 23 verse 36. Besides, it must be borne in mind that every prophet has his own particular diction, which is, as it were, his language. And it is in that language that the prophecy addressed to him is communicated to those who understand it. Okay? let me just. So what is Maimonides saying here? He's saying that you read a passage in the Bible, basically, you think you know what it means, but it means the opposite of what you think you know that it means. It means the opposite. Okay? So we cannot, so many people, I notice they're so full of it. They're so full of arrogance. They say, I know for sure, 100% certain what it means. Dunning-Kruger at its best, on top of Mount Stupid, okay? I highly recommend that any such person should do more studies to learn more, to admit to themselves that they don't know much. In fact, like Socrates would say, at the end of all the studies, at the end of all wisdom, you know that you know nothing. Okay? So, short little outlook here, what we're going to do tonight. We've already dealt with who Maimonides is and destroying the lie that it's all from NASA, and destroying the lie that people don't, people 500 years ago thought, knew that the earth was flat. Okay, we've made this point very clear here, and I've shown you the clear evidence in writing. Okay, I've done this last week as well. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to read a little bit more of chapter 29. I'm going to read through chapter 29, perhaps the rest of it. Read some of chapter 30 because Maimonides goes into more detail about the earth, the shape of the earth, and cosmology, and what the scriptures really say or what they mean, especially in Genesis chapter 1. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about that. And sometime sometime a little bit later, not right now, but sometime a little bit later, Hannah's going to come and she's going to play some live music for us. I will be diving in to some degree into the creation story a little bit later, as well as showing you guys videos. We got video evidence of how refraction works. Video evidence of refraction in action. Okay. I will say this: if there's any one of you that are, if you're listening to this and you're not open, my question is, why are you listening? Okay. If you're here to seek for the truth, then I pray that you find it. But you can't find the truth if you're not willing to listen. If you're not willing to consider the fact that you could be wrong. Okay. So that's what we're going to do here in the next little while. I do want to wrap it up probably around 9 o'clock here, or another hour and a half at the most. So, okay, I'll just continue here with this very, very good, what Maimonides is saying. Again, Maimonides is one of the foremost, if not the most well-known, well-respected scholars of the Hebrew texts in history. Okay, so he says that basically you can read the scriptures and you think you know what it means, but it means the opposite of what you think what you believe. Okay, so he says here, besides, it must be borne in mind that every prophet has his own peculiar diction, which is, as it were, his language. So according to Maimonides, every prophet has his own language per se. Okay, he has his own way of talking. He has his own way of writing. He has his own dialect, as it were, or he has his own way of speaking, his own way of communicating. And this is the problem with Christians today when they read the Bible. They read every book as if it's all like they read every book through the same lens. They read every book through the same filter. Instead of saying, "Oh, wait a second. wait a second, the book of Job is completely different in style, and in the author is different than Isaiah. And if Isaiah says ABC and Job says ABC, they could be completely two different things. Okay? Let's get deep. Let's get deeper in our understanding of the scriptures and understanding of the historicity behind it. Okay, we need to really use our noggins here. So, again, Maimonides, which probably one of the most prolific Hebrew scholars in history, says that each prophet has his own language, as it were, and that it is in that language that the prophecy addressed to him is communicated to those who understand it. Okay. Right. So keep in mind what Maimonides is saying here. And just a little bit after this, just for you guys to know what I'm talking about here, just a little bit after this, he's going to go into the whole thing about the earth and the cosmology and all that kind of stuff. Again, Maimonides, he doesn't have the instruments that we have today. Okay, so all things considered, he knew the shape of the earth at least, and he knows very well this particular concept, that each author of the Bible has his own language, which, even though they say the same thing, they can mean completely different things. It's not as simple as most people think it is. It's not as simple. A lot of people overly simplify things. So after this preliminary remark, you will understand the metaphor frequently employed by Isaiah and less frequently by other prophets. Oh, by the way, I'm just a little bit of a preview here. We're going to get into Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. The whole thing about the Lord sits upon the circle of the earth. One of flat earthers' favorite verses. Yeah, Maimonides is going to touch on that. Okay. All right. So, so after this preliminary remark, you will understand the metaphor frequently employed by Isaiah and less frequently by other prophets when they describe the ruin of a kingdom or the destruction of a great nation in phrases like the following. Okay, you know what, guys? When I was reading this before, I got to tell you something. This is really, really good. This is really, really good, because this actually, even just a little while ago, as I was going over this, I went over this a couple times, and I'm like, every time I go over this, I'm thinking, wow, I'm learning something different. It's awesome. Again, I encourage every single person listening to this, if you're listening to it live or you're listening to the replay, get into your student's shoes. Get into your learning shoes. If you're not in your learning shoes, you won't learn. And that's not wise. Not wise. Get into your learning shoes. All right. So here it is. The stars have fallen. Doesn't that sound familiar? We got some flat earthers that use that. Oh, the stars have fallen. How can the stars fall if they're like billions of light years away, and how can they all fall to the earth? Well, sorry, you're 1,000% wrong on that. You inject your own little minute, finite little understanding into it, and you completely miss what it's actually saying. Watch what Maimonides is saying here, what it really means. The stars have fallen, quote unquote and unquote, and then quote, the heavens are overthrown, unquote. Quote, the sun is darkened. We all know that one, don't we? Unquote. And quote, the earth is waste and trembles, unquote. And similar metaphors. The Arabs likewise say of a person who has met with a serious accident, quote, his heavens together with his earth have been covered, unquote. Look at that. Look at that. So if you read that in the scriptures, his heavens together with his earth have been covered, or together with his earth has been covered. A lot of flat earthers, because they're so hyper literal, they'll think that, oh, this is literal. Not at all. It means a person who's been in an accident. All right? Think about that for a minute. Who knew? Right? Maimonides, right? He says, you see something like this. His heavens together with his earth have been covered. It means that somebody was in an accident. Okay? Mind blown yet? Okay, and when they speak of the approach of a nation's prosperity, they say the light of the sun and moon has increased. Again, according to flat earth logic and flat earth minds, they'd say, oh, the light of the sun and the moon have increased. That means they got brighter. That means, yeah, the sun was brighter. Got nothing at all to do with the sun. According to Maimonides, that phrase, the light of the sun and the moon has increased, means that the nation is prosperous. That's all that it means. It's got nothing to do with cosmological stuff. It's a figure of speech that speaks of a particular nation's prosperity. Mind blown yet? Let's go on. Okay? A new heaven and a new earth has been created. Does that sound familiar? A new heaven and a new earth has been created? According to Maimonides, that is code for the nation prospers. Mind blown yet? Okay. I know some people, it's hard for them to get this. It's hard for them to understand this, hard for them to grasp this, because if they do, I mean, they can't, because it's like they can't humble themselves enough to say, I was wrong, or I believe something that was not true, because they get stuck, right? You get stuck in this rut. You get stuck in this the way they typically interpret things. At least, okay, this is what I encourage everyone within the sound of my voice. I'm not saying you should just, all I'm saying is this. You should at least make sure that we are not too overconfident about all of these things, right? All of us, myself included, right? We got to make sure that we're not on Mount Stupid. We got to make sure that we're not so, I'm confident I know exactly what that means. Well, when was that written? Like 2,700 years ago? You're saying that you know exactly what was in the mind of that author over 2,000 or 2,500, 2,700 years ago? You really know? Really? Maimonides says, he claims that these kind of phrases, a new heaven and a new earth, means that a nation's prosperous. Isn't that interesting? Okay, moving on. So also the prophets, in referring to the ruin of a person or of a nation or of a country, describe it as the result of God's great anger and wrath, while the prosperity of a nation is the result of God's pleasure and satisfaction. In the former case, the prophets employ such phrases as he came forth, came down, roared, thundered, caused his voice to be heard, and also, quote, he commanded, unquote, said, did, made, and the like, as will be shown. Sometimes the prophets use the term mankind instead of the people of a certain place, whose destruction they predict. For example, Isaiah, speaking of the destruction of Israel, says, quote, and the Lord will remove man far away, unquote. Isaiah 6, verse 12. By the way, you guys in the live chat, I'll get to the live chat here shortly. Okay. So also Zephaniah in Zephaniah 1, 3, and 4 says, and I will cut off man from off the earth. I will also stretch out my hand upon Judah. Note this likewise. Having spoken of the language of the prophets in general, I will now verify and prove my statement. When Isaiah received the divine mission to prophesy the destruction of the Babylonian Empire, the death of Sennacherib and that of Nebuchadnezzar, who rose after the overthrow of Sennacherib, he commences in the following manner to describe their fall and the end of their dominion, their defeat, and such evils as are endured by all who are vanquished and compelled to flee before the victorious sword of the enemy. Quote, "For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun is darkened and in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine." Notice, Maimonides makes it very clear. He believes this has nothing to do, he's not literal at all. Not even close to being literal. Not even close. Okay, so he's saying, listen, you guys need to understand that we have figures of speech here, and more than just figures of speech. We have words that sound the same, that are the same in different languages, but mean opposite things. You know, even in our English language, if you look up the word nice, you know, people say, he's a nice guy, he's a nice guy. But you know, the origin of the word nice, nonscience in the Latin, means stupid and foolish. You know that? And the word bully, too, seems to have the completely opposite meaning in ancient days as to what it means today. And that's just within the English language, let alone Hebrew, translated into Greek, translated into English. On the other side of the world, 2,000 years, 3,000 years removed. Like, come on, we gotta get this. We gotta understand. We should not approach the scriptures with the attitude as, I know exactly what it means. Unless you have good evidence. I mean, really good evidence. Like you use the instruments that God has given you to measure or to prove something. Okay. But even then, I mean, I remember listening to a high-profile court case once, trial, and the judge, very wise, what he said was, he said, there's no such thing as 100% certainty on anything. You have to just say it's beyond a reasonable doubt. So, going back here, for the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun is darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And that's in Isaiah 13:10. And again, therefore, quote, "Therefore I will shake the heavens and the earth shall remove out of her place, and in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger." Chapter 13, verse 13. Maimonides continues by saying, "I do not think that any person is so foolish and blind and so much in favor of the literal sense of the figurative and oratorical phrases." Think about that for a second. I do not think that any person is so foolish and blind and so much in favor of the literal sense of figurative and oratorical phrases as to assume that at the fall of the Babylonian kingdom, a change took place in the nature of the stars of heaven or in the light of the sun and moon, or that the earth moved away from its center. Okay? So, here's the thing. Even Maimonides, 800 plus years ago, considering the fact that he didn't have as much knowledge as we do today in certain, with the instruments that we have now, that we can make measurements and such, and send rockets up in the sky and all this kind of stuff as well. He didn't have all this stuff, but yet he thought it was really foolish and really, really blind for anyone to take these things literally. Hello? Yes. And now in the information age, what do we have? We have some of the most ridiculous, stupid, and foolish things you could ever imagine going on. People believing things that are just absolutely ludicrous. Okay, so for all this is merely the description of a country that has been defeated. The inhabitants undoubtedly find all light dark and all sweet things bitter. The whole earth appears too narrow for them, and the heavens are changed in their eyes. Okay. He speaks in a similar manner when he describes the poverty and humiliation of people of Israel, their captivity and their defeat, the continuous misfortunes caused by the wicked Sennacherib when he ruled over the fortified cities of fortified places of Judah, or the loss of the entire land of Israel when it came into the possession of Sennacherib. He says, this is in chapter 24, verse 17, quote, "Fear and the pits and the snare are upon thee, O inhabitant of the earth, and it shall come to pass that he who flees from the noise of the fear shall fall into a pit, and he that comes out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. The earth is utterly broken down. The earth is clean dissolved. The earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard," unquote. At the end of the same prophecy, when Isaiah describes how God will punish Sennacherib, destroy his mighty empire, and reduce him to disgrace, he uses the following figure in chapter 24, verse 23. Quote, "Then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, and the Lord of hosts shall reign," etc. This verse is beautifully explained by Jonathan, the son of Uzziel. He says that when Sennacherib will meet with his fate because of Jerusalem, the idolaters will understand that this is the work of God. They will faint and be confounded. He therefore translates the verse thus, quote, "Those who worship the moon will be ashamed, and those who bow down to the sun will be humbled when the kingdom of God shall reveal itself," unquote, etc. The prophet then pictures the peace of the children of Israel after the death of Sennacherib, the fertility and the cultivation of their land, and the increasing power of their kingdom through Hezekiah. He employs here the figure of the increase of the light of the sun and moon. When speaking of the defeated, he says that for them the light of the sun and the moon will be diminished and darkened. In the same sense, their light is said to increase for the victorious. We can frequently notice the correctness of this figure of speech. When great troubles befall us, our eyes become dim, and we cannot see clearly because the spiritus visus is made turbid by the prevailing vapors, and is weakened and diminished by great anxiety and straits of the soul. While in a state of gladness and comfort of the soul, the spiritus visus becomes clear, and the man feels as if the light had increased. Thus the good tidings and the people shall dwell in Zion and in Jerusalem, and shall weep no more, etc. Conclude the following manner, quote, "Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold, and as the light of 7 days, and in the day that the Lord binds up the breaches of his people and heals the stroke of their wound, unquote. And that is Isaiah chapter 30, verses 19 and 26. That is to say, when God will raise them up again after they have fallen through the wicked Sennacherib. The phrase, quote, as the light of 7 days, unquote, signifies, according to the commentators, quote, very great light. For in this same sense, the number 7 is frequently used in Hebrew. I think that the reference is made by this phrase to the 7 days of the dedication of the temple in the reign of Solomon. For there was never a nation so great, prosperous, and happy in every respect as Israel was at that time, and therefore the prophet says that Israel's greatness and happiness will be the same as it was in those 7 days. Speaking of wicked Edom, Israel's oppressor, Isaiah says, quote, their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood, and all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down, as a leaf falls off the vine, and as a fig falls from the tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, I shall come down upon Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment, unquote. That is Isaiah chapter 34, verses 3 to 5. Will any person who has eyes to see find in these verses any expression that is obscure, or that might lead him to think that they contain an account of what will befall the heavens, or anything but a figurative description of the ruin of the Edomites? With the withdrawal of God's protection from them, their decline, and the sudden and rapid fall of their nobles. As I'm reading this, I can't help but talk about this and mention this because of the fact that we have so many flat earthers that buy into this garbage. That we did several weeks ago. We did a video about Skiba's deception, and this is one of the things that he brought up, that he proves that the earth is flat or some nonsense like that. Maimonides, which certainly would know Hebrew and the Tanakh way more than Skiba would, way more. One of the if not the foremost authority of the Tanakh in the Hebrew scriptures. He says this has nothing to do with the sun or the stars or anything like that. It's all figurative. It's all figurative. It's talking about the destruction of the Edomites. That's it. Nothing to do with the heavens or the cosmology or anything like that. Nothing. The prophet means to say that the individuals who were like stars as regards to their punishment, so the stars represent the individuals. It's symbolic. It's a metaphor. The prophet means to say that in individuals who are like stars as regards to their punishment, their permanent, high, and undisturbed position will quickly come down as a leaf falls from the vine, and as a fig falling from the fig tree. This is self-evident, and there would be no need to mention it, much less to speak on it at length, and it not become necessary owing to the fact that the common people, even persons who are considered as distinguished scholars, quote this passage without regarding its context or its purpose in support of their view of the future destruction of the heavens. They believe that Scripture describes here what will happen in the future, happen to the heavens, in the same manner as it informs us how the heavens have come into existence. Again, when Isaiah told the Israelites what afterwards became a well-known fact, that Sennacherib, after his allied nations and kings, would perish, and that the Israelites would be helped by God alone, he employed figurative language and said, quote, "See how the heavens decay and the earth withers away, and all beings on earth die, and you are saved." That is to say, those who are filled on those who have filled the earth and have been considered, to use a hyperbole, as permanent and stable as the heavens, will quickly perish and disappear like smoke, and their famous power that has been as stable as the earth will be destroyed like a garment. The passage to which I refer begins, quote, "For the Lord has comforted Zion, he has comforted all her waste places," unquote, etc. And quote, "Hearken unto my people, unquote, etc. And quote, "My righteousness is near, my salvation is gone forth," unquote, etc. It continues thus: "Lift up your eyes to the heavens and look upon the earth beneath, for the heavens shall vanish like smoke, and the earth shall wax old like a garment, and they that dwell therein shall die in like manner, for my salvation shall be forever, and my righteousness shall not be abolished." Isaiah 51, verses 3 to 6. The restoration of the kingdom of Israel, its stability and permanence, is described as a creation of heaven and earth. Look at that. Look at that. The restoration of the kingdom of Israel, its stability and permanence, is described as a creation of heaven and earth. So according to, let me just say, it seems like Maimonides is saying here that the idea of a creation of heaven and earth is referring to the restoration of the kingdom of Israel, its stability and permanence. Psalm 94 says, "I would think that this is the channel where flat earthers need to be. They are hearing truth. It's no good if all we hear is only one-sided." That's how we learn, right? Yes, absolutely. And thank you very much. I appreciate that. The thing is this. I have noticed this. I have noticed this over the past almost year now, since I've been addressing this topic. And that is that flat earthers, they like it when they can, let me put it this way. They don't like it when there's evidence that's hard for them to refute. Some of the best videos that I posted on the Leveling Flat Earth series, some of the best videos, in my opinion, the best ones are the ones that are least viewed. And I believe it's because flat earthers look at that and go, "Oh, yeah," and just kind of walk away, instead of, the other parts that I put on my Leveling Flat Earth series. So they think that, okay, I have a chance to argue here because maybe what Christopher said is something that I can argue against. Maybe, maybe the argument, maybe the evidence that he presented or the argument that he's making is not as strong as the other one is. So it's easier to refute. So therefore they get involved in the comment section and the views go up. Mark says, "Enjoy this jibber jabber nonsense." Sorry, Mark, that you don't understand this. I think it's awesome. Obviously you don't understand it, or else you wouldn't be saying that. Yeah, sorry to hear about that. Okay. Moving on here. For Isaiah, let me just say this. You talk to anybody, you talk to any Jewish or Orthodox Jew or practicing Jew, and you mention Rambam or Maimonides, it's like the highest respect they have for this particular author, for this particular Jewish scholar. And to think that, again, this kind of a slander that people like to throw out there, and they throw out this slander just because they don't understand. It's like, You don't understand what Maimonides is saying here, so you got to just throw a negative comment up. Pretty sad, but anyways. As my grandmother used to always say, it takes all to make a world, right? It takes all to make a world. For Isaiah frequently speaks of the land of a king as if it were the whole universe, as if heaven and earth belonged to him. He therefore comforts Israel and says, quote, I, even I, am he that comforts you, unquote. And quote, I have put my words in your mouth, and I have covered you in the shadow of my hand, that I may plant the heavens and lay the foundations of the earth, and say to Zion, you are my people. That's in chapter 51, verses 12 to 16. In the following verses, Isaiah declares that the dominion of Israel will continue, while that of the renowned and mighty people will cease. Quote, for the mountains shall depart, etc. And that's in chapter 54. And that's in chapter 54, verse 10. In order to express that the kingdom of the Messiah will be permanent and that the kingdom of Israel will not be destroyed anymore, he says, quote, your sun shall no more go down, unquote, etc. In metaphors like these, which are intelligible to those who understand the context, which are intelligible to those who understand the context. In other words, if you don't understand the context, it's just gibberish to you, right? It's just gibber jabberish, right? If you don't understand the context, it's not intelligible to you. In metaphors like these, which are intelligible to those who understand the context, Isaiah continues to describe the details of the exile, the restoration, and the removal of all sorrow, and says figuratively as follows, I will create new heavens and a new earth. The first shall be forgotten, and their memory shall be blotted out, unquote. He explains this in the course of the speech, pointing out that by the phrase, quote, I will create, unquote. He means that God will give them perpetual gladness and joy in the place of the previous grief and mourning, which shall no longer be remembered. I will now describe the sequence of the ideas and the number of the verses in which these ideas are contained. The prophet begins as follows. I will mention the loving kindnesses of the Lord. This is chapter 58, verse 7. 63, verse 7. Chapter 63, verse 7. He then gives an account of God's past kindness to us, concluding with the words, quote, and he bare them and carried them all the days of old, unquote. That's verse 9. Next follows our rebellion, quote, but they rebelled and vexed his Holy Spirit, unquote. Verse 10. The dominion of our enemies cover us. Quote, our adversaries have trodden down your sanctuary. We are like those over whom you have never ruled, unquote, etc. This is verses 18 and 19. And the prophet's prayer on our account, quote, be not wroth very sore, unquote. And that is chapter 64, verse 9. The prophet then describes how we deserve these punishments and how we are called to the truth but did not respond. Quote, I offered myself to be sought of them that asked not for me, unquote. That's chapter 65, verse 1. Promises mercy and pardon. Quote, thus saith the Lord, as the new wine is found in the cluster, unquote. Verse 8. Predicts evil for our oppressors. Quote, behold, my servant shall eat, but you shall be hungry, unquote. Verse 13. And moral improvement of our nation to such a degree that we shall be a blessing on earth, and the previous troubles will be forgotten. And he shall call his servants by another name, and that he who blessed himself in the earth shall bless himself in the God of truth. And he that swears in the earth shall swear by the God of truth, because the former troubles are forgotten, and because they hid from mine eyes. For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former shall not be remembered nor come into mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy, and I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people, unquote. And that is chapter 65, verses 15 to 19. The whole subject must now be clear and evident, for the words, quote, I create new heavens and a new earth, unquote, are followed by an explanation. I create Jerusalem a rejoicing, and her people a joy, unquote. The prophet then adds that the seed and name of Israel will be as permanent as their faith and as the rejoicing in it, which God promised to create and to spread over the whole earth. For faith in God and rejoicing in it are two possessions which, once obtained, are never lost or changed. This is expressed in the words, quote, For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make remain before you, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. That's chapter 66, verse 22. But of other nations, in some instances, the seed remains, while the name has perished. For example, many people are of your seed, of the Persians or Greeks, without being known that by that special name. They bear the names of their nations, of which they form part. According to my opinion, we have here a prophecy that our religion, which gives us our special name, will remain permanently. Okay, so Maimonides goes on really, isn't this is amazing. Again, Maimonides, what he's doing here is he's kind of laying the foundation before he goes into the whole creation story of all, how he interprets Genesis chapter 1. I think you get a little bit of an idea how he would interpret it. Just before I go too far here, Anthony says shalom. Shalom, Anthony. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Blessings. Anthony says, someone says every eye will see Jesus in his coming, and that proves flat earth. What do you think? That's a figure of speech. Definitely a figure of speech. That is very much like how flat earthers told me that another proof of flat earth is, where it's in the temptation of the Christ, where the devil took him up on the mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world. It's got to be flat in order to see all the kingdoms of the world, right? Well, where's that mountain? I want to go. Take me there. Buy a ticket for me. Where's that mountain where I can go up on the mountain and see all the kingdoms of the world? Where is it? It's either it's there, literally there, or it's a figure of speech. Okay? So, yes. I do believe it's a figure of speech, and if anyone knows, if anybody can, if they have evidence that, there is a mountain, in the Holy Land, or thereabouts, that this is the mountain that Jesus went up, and even Mount Everest, you can't see the whole world from Mount Everest, okay? It's a figure of speech. Yes, it's a figure of speech. But if somebody actually thinks that it's literal, like seriously, if someone is serious and they actually think that it's literal, please buy me a ticket. I want to go there. I'll take a video right from the top of that mountain so you can see in the background all the kingdoms of the world. Yeah. Spoiler. Spoiler alert, it's not literal. It's not literal. Okay. Stephen says a plumb line is proof. Certainly is proof. Yes, that's for sure. Certainly is. Just plenty of proof. Plenty. Let me see now. Okay, I'll read some more here, and then this is chapter 29, by the way, and chapter 30 goes into the whole narrative of creation and such. See what Maimonides says about that. And again, we have a video. I have more than one video actually that is proof. Talk about proof. But then again, you know what? If you're going to deny, there's no such thing as deniable evidence or undeniable evidence. There's no such thing as undeniable evidence because people deny whatever they want to deny. That's really where it's at. It's like, are you willing to look at it and say, hey, you know what? I want to find out if it's true. You know, is refraction really a thing? Can you actually see over a curve with refraction? Do you have any proof of that? I have a video that actually demonstrates that quite nicely. But I mean, if you're already made up in your mind that you know, no evidence whatsoever will persuade you, then nothing. No hope. You got no hope because you already blocked yourself out to truth. Okay, moving on here. So we're on page 337, and Maimonides says, as these figures are frequent. Check that out. These figures are frequent in Isaiah. I explained all of them. But we meet with them also in the words of other prophets, Jeremiah, in describing the destruction of Jerusalem in consequence of our sins. Says in 4:23, quote, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, unquote. Ezekiel chapter 32, verse 7 and 8. Foretells the destruction of the kingdom of Egypt and the death of Pharaoh through Nebuchadnezzar in the following words, and when I shall put you out, I will cover the heaven. Okay, I will cover the heaven and make the stars thereof dark. And I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light. All the bright lights of heaven will I make dark over you, and set darkness upon your land, saith the Lord. Unquote. Joel, the son of Pethuel, chapter 2, verse 10, describes this multitude of locusts that came in his days as follows. So this is interesting because I know a lot of people, a lot of Christians, they love this. And actually, this is a good passage. It's a really interesting passage. Joel chapter 2 is a really interesting passage. Let's see what Maimonides has to say about Joel 2 and the locusts. Quote, the earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining, unquote. That's Amos chapter 8, verses 9 and 10, speaking of the destruction of Samaria. Speaking of the destruction of Samaria, says, I will cause the sun to go down at noon and will darken the earth in the clear day, and I will turn your feasts, unquote. Micah chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. In relating to the fall of Samaria, he uses the following well-known rhetorical figures. Quote, for behold, the Lord comes forth out of his place and will come down and will tread upon the high places of the earth, and the mountains shall be molten, unquote. Similarly, Haggai, chapter 2, verse 6 and 7, in describing the destruction of the kingdom of Medes and Persians, quote, I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, unquote. When David, Psalm 60 verse 4 describes how during the expedition of Joab against the Edomites, the nation was low and weak, and how he prayed to God for his assistance. He says, quote, "You have made the earth to tremble. You have broken it. Heal the breaches thereof." See, you have broken it. You have broken the earth. So what are, if there's any flat earthers listening, I want to ask you a question, because I know you interpret the scripture like super literally. So it says that God has broken the earth. So if the earth is flat and he's literally broken it, when did that happen? When did that happen? And how did that look? What happened? I'd like to have some details. So he smashed the record, I guess. Literally. He broke the earth. He must have, the heavenly sledgehammer or something. I don't know. He broke it literally. Excuse my sarcasm, but I just have to. See, sometimes I'm sarcastic just to make a point. It's not to be taken literally, just like how Maimonides is saying here. Heal the breaches thereof, for it shakes. In another instance, he expresses the idea that we need not fear when we see other nations die and perish, because we rely on God's support and not on our sword and strength, in accordance with the words, quote, "A people saved by the Lord shall the shield of your help," unquote. It's Deuteronomy 33:29. And he says in Psalm 46, verse 2, "Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be shaken in the midst of the sea." The following figurative language is employed in Scripture in referring to the death of the Egyptians in the Red Sea. Quote, the waters saw you, they were afraid. The depths also were trembled. The voice of your thunder was in heaven. The lightnings lightened the world. The earth trembled and shook, unquote. And that is Psalm 77, verses 17 to 19. Was the Lord displeased against the rivers? That Habakkuk 3:8. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, etc. It's Psalm 13, or this would be 18, verse 9. The earth trembled, etc. Judges 5:4 in the Song of Deborah. There are many other instances, but those which I have not quoted can be explained in accordance with those which I have cited. Let us now consider the words of Joel in Joel 3, verses 3 to 5. Quote, "And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered, for in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance," unquote, etc. I refer them to the defeat of Sennacherib near Jerusalem, but they may be taken as an account of the defeat of Gog and Magog near Jerusalem in the days of the Messiah. If this appears preferable, although nothing is mentioned in this passage, but great slaughter, destruction, fire, and diminution of the light of the two luminaries, you perhaps object. How can the day of the fall of Sennacherib, according to our explanation, be called the great and terrible day of the Lord? But you must know that the great salvation or of great distress is called the great and terrible day of the Lord. Thus Joel 2:11 says the day on which the locust came over the land, quote, "For the day of the Lord is great and terrible, and who can abide it?" unquote. Our opinion, in support of which we have quoted these passages, clearly established, namely, that no prophet or sage has ever announced the destruction of the universe, or a change of its present condition, or a permanent change in any of its properties. When our sages say, quote, the world remains 6,000 years and 1,000 years it will be waste, unquote, they do not mean a complete cessation of existing things. The phrase 1,000 years it will be waste distinctly shows that time will continue. Besides, this is the individual opinion of one rabbi and in accordance with one particular theory. But on the other hand, the words, quote, there is nothing new under the sun, unquote, Ecclesiastes 1:9, in the sense that no new creation takes place in any way, under any circumstances, express the general opinion of our sages and include the principle of every one of the doctors of the Mishnah and the Talmud recognizes and makes use of its arguments. Even those who understand the words new heavens and a new earth in their literal sense hold that the heavens which will in future be formed have already been created and are in existence, and that for this reason the present tense remain is used and not the future will remain. They support their view by citing the text, quote, there is nothing new under the sun. Do not imagine that this is opposed to our opinion. They mean perhaps to say that the natural laws by which the promised future condition of Israel will be effected have been in existence since the days of the creation, and in that they are perfectly correct. When I, however, said that no prophet ever announced a permanent change of any of its properties, I intended to accept miracles. For although the rod was turned into a serpent, the water into blood, the pure and noble hand into a leprous one, without the existence of any natural cause that would affect those or similar phenomena, these changes were not permanent. Not permanent. Isn't that interesting? So he's saying the miracles were not permanent, but have not become a physical property. They have not become a physical property. On the contrary, the universe sense continues its regular course. This is my opinion. This should be our belief. Our sages, however, said very strange things as regards miracles. They are found in Bereshit Rabbah and in Midrash Kohelet. Namely, that the miracles are to some extent also natural. For they say, when God created the universe with its present physical properties, he made it part of these properties, that they should produce certain miracles at certain times. Isn't that interesting? That's like pre-programming the code to make room for these miracles at a certain time. It's interesting, isn't it? According to Maimonides' Rambam's interpretation here. Okay, so he made it part of these properties that they should produce certain miracles at certain times, and the sign of a prophet consisted in the fact that God told him to declare when a certain thing will take place. But the thing itself was affected according to the fixed laws of nature. Isn't that interesting? You know, this reminds me of, like, for example, you have the story in the Tanakh about, you know what? Let's just kind of go over there for a second. It's interesting. Right here, just quickly. 2 Kings 2:21. Elisha went out to the spring. He threw salt in it and said, "This is what the Lord says. I have healed this water. No longer will death or unfruitfulness result from it." So it has been theorized. I think it's a very good possibility that this miracle is actually what Maimonides is referring to. It's actually a natural occurrence, although it seems it is a miracle in a sense, but it's not. in another sense. And let me explain. So we have this water that's obviously polluted water that people are dying from drinking it. And so Elisha threw salt in it, and the water was quote unquote healed. Well, did you know that today, if you have water that's polluted, bacteria, and it's got lots of stuff in it, you can throw a salt in it, especially alum. I believe that's it's alum here. A type of chemical compound, usually hydrated double sulfate salt of aluminum with general formula. Okay, potassium or ammonium. So like potassium alum. So it'd be like potassium aluminum sulfate. Potassium alum sulfate. So this alum, if you put it in water, all of the impurities of the water, all of if it's like full of bacteria and dirt and stuff, and like some water, it's like it's just suspended in the water and it won't settle. Well, if you put alum in it, I've done this myself actually. Okay, I've done this myself. Put alum in the water, and mix it up a little bit. All of the impurities will fall to the bottom of that vessel, and you'll have pure water. In fact, some of the kits that you buy today for purifying water includes alum in it. So it's like, to me, 2 Kings is probably talking about alum. More than likely talking about alum, because alum can do that, and it's a salt. Right? So super interesting. Yeah, so according to Rambam, Maimonides, he says that a lot of these miracles, or all of them, most of them, are actually fixed laws of nature. If this is really the meaning of the passage referred to, it testifies to the greatness of the author and shows that he held it to be impossible that there should be a change in the laws of nature or a change in the will of God as regards to the physical properties of things after they have once been established. He therefore assumes that God gave the waters the property of joining together and of flowing in a downward direction and of separating only at the time when the Egyptians were drowned, and only in a particular place. I have already pointed out to you the source of this passage, and it only tends to oppose the hypothesis of a new creation. I said there, our Jonathan said, God made an agreement with the sea that it should divide before the Israelites. Thus it is said, quote, and the sea returned to its strength and the morning appeared, unquote. This is Exodus chapter 14, verse 27. And Rabbi Jeremiah, son of Eliezer, says, not only with the sea, but with all that has been created in the 6 days of the beginning, what was the agreement made? This is referred to in the words, quote, even my hands have stretched out the heavens, and all their hosts have I commanded, unquote. That's Isaiah chapter 45, verse 12. I have commanded the sea to divide, and fire not to hurt Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The lions not to harm Daniel, and the fish to spit out Jonah. The same is the case with the rest of the miracles. We have thus clearly stated and explained our opinion that we agree with Aristotle in one half of his theory. For we believe that this universe remains perpetually with the same properties with which the Creator has endowed it, and that none of these will ever be changed except by way of miracle in some individual instances, although the Creator has the power to change the whole universe, to annihilate it, or to remove any of its properties. The universe had, however, a beginning and commencement, for when nothing was as yet in existence except God, his wisdom decreed that the universe be brought into existence at a certain time, and that it should not be annihilated or changed as regards any of its properties, except in some instances. Some of these are known to us, while others belong to the future and are therefore unknown to us. This is our opinion on the basis of our religion. The opinion of Aristotle is that the universe, being permanent and indestructible, is also eternal and without beginning. We have already shown that this theory is based on the hypothesis that the universe is the necessary result of causal relation, and that this hypothesis includes a certain amount of blasphemy. Having come thus far, we will make in the next chapter a few remarks on the passages in the first chapters of Genesis. This is what we're getting at here. For the primary object in this treatise has been to expound as much as possible on the scriptural account of the creation, Ma'aseh Bereshit, and the description of the heavenly chariot, Ma'aseh Merkabah. And let us premise two general observations. First, the account given in Scripture of the creation is not, as is generally believed, intended to be in all parts literal. Oh, look at that. Look at this. Look at this, guys. Look at this. Look at that. Okay? Okay, so this is one of the greatest. Again, you look it up. Do a search for yourself, okay? The greatest Jewish scholars in history. I'll be surprised if Maimonides doesn't show up there. I'll be surprised if Rambam doesn't show up there. Rambam, I should say. Rambam is Maimonides. It's the same person. He says, okay, I would think that his account of the Hebrew would have more weight and authority than some Christian who thinks they know what it means when they read it. Okay. I would think that Maimonides would know a little bit more. That's a hyperbole in the other. That's an anti-hyperbole, I guess you could say. So he says right here, okay? So we're getting into the creation account. Now let me just say this as well. You'll find this that flat earthers, I have experienced this how many times now in the past few months. Flat earthers, remember the first debate we had a flat earther that the first thing they throw out there is, what about the creation story? What about how can the sun come in day 4 in well, what's that got to do with the shape of the earth? Like, really? It's got nothing to do with the shape of the earth. Whether or not the sun was created on day 1 or day 4 or created 1,000 years afterwards, it's got nothing to do with the shape of the earth. Absolutely nothing. So it's just a distraction. It's a distraction. It's a deception. These flat earthers are deceiving away from the fact that it doesn't say anything about flat earth. So they're deflecting. They're deceiving. But we're going to go into it anyway because I think it's an interesting passage, and y'all, I know that a lot of you know this anyway. But hey, it's very interesting to read what a what an ancient scholar like this has to say about it. So first thing he says here, okay? First thing he says is, first, the account given in Scripture of the creation is not, as is generally believed, intended to be in all parts literal. So he starts off by saying that it's not literal, at least not in all parts. Listen to this. For if this were the case, wise men would not have kept its explanation secret. And our sages would not have employed figurative speech in treating of the creation in order to hide its true meaning. Nor would they have objected to discuss it in the presence of the common people. The literal meaning of the words might lead us to conceive corrupt ideas, to form false opinions about God, or even entirely to abandon and reject the principles of our faith. Look at this. Look at this. This is what Maimonides says here. I gotta highlight this one. It's a good one too. The literal meaning of the words might lead us to conceive corrupt ideas and to form false opinions about God, or even entirely to abandon and reject the principles of our faith. You know how many comments I get on all I do is just question. I just say, hey, a day may be eternal. It could be one day of creation can be eternal. I just say it's possible. You know how many comments I get on that? How dare you say it's not literal? How dare you say it's not literal? Well, hey, Maimonides, he doesn't seem to think it's literal, okay? And I think that Maimonides knows a little bit more than a lot of other people know. So anyways, he says, it is therefore right to abstain. It is therefore right to abstain and refrain from examining this subject superficially and unscientifically. Okay, so what does this mean? What he's saying here then is we need to examine the creation story with depth and with science. That's what he's saying. That's what Maimonides is saying. A lot of people, well, not a lot, but the few of the science deniers that we have, the same people that use science to communicate, the same people that use science to actually try to tear it down, bite the hand that feeds you. These people, they would say, oh, science this, science that. But you read we read about it in Philo not too long ago. Philo himself, again, living around the same time as Jesus. Philo called the father of the faith, Abraham, a man of science. Abraham. Yeah. So, anyways, so Maimonides says it is therefore right to refrain from examining this subject superficially and unscientifically. Okay. So in other words, don't examine this subject of creation without the use of the science that God has given us to use. It's a tool, right? It's a tool. That's a good one too. We must blame the practice of some ignorant preachers and expounders of the Bible who think that wisdom consists in knowing the explanation of words. Oh, yeah. You know what? I think as I'm reading this, Maimonides say, what he said there a couple pages ago, he's like, I don't think I can't even, I don't think it's possible that somebody's stupid enough or, foolish and ignorant enough to take it literally. Can you imagine? Fast forward 800 years and say, hey, Maimonides, hey, Moshe ben Maimon, hey, guess what? We're living in the day of great information and education everywhere. And guess what people are starting to believe? Guess what's exploding in guess what's trending now? Guess what kind of foolishness, stupidity is being pushed out there? You read these things from these kind of people, from the ancients, okay? The ancients, they highly regarded the use of reason, the use of the intellect, the use of science in interpreting the scriptures. They highly regarded it. Look, it's right there. It's right there. Right there. We must blame the practice of some ignorant preachers and expounders of the Bible who think that wisdom consists in knowing the explanation of words, and that greater perfection is attained by employing mere words and longer speech. Okay? Oh, yeah. That's awesome. That's just awesome. That's just awesome. Because look what we got today. We got people today, they jump on in the comment section or in the live chat and they make, well, the earth is flat. It's just words. Well, you can see Chicago across the lake. Hello. There is something called refraction. I'm going to show you. By the way, you guys, you're in for a treat tonight because there's an amazing video I'm about to show you guys. Again, it's a few videos, short videos, and it is proof of refraction and how refraction works. Okay, so just got a few more paragraphs here. Then Hannah will come on and bless us with some live music. Then we'll be back and we'll read a little bit more about what Maimonides says about the creation story, because he's going to go in it. He's going to dig into the verses, okay, verse by verse. I'm not going to go too far. I'm going to go as far probably as at least the first few verses of Genesis anyway. I'll lay a foundation. So I'm going to read a few more paragraphs here. Then Hannah will come on and bless us. And we will come back, read a little bit more from Maimonides, and then I'll show you guys the video. Actually, more than one video. 3 short videos I have. 3 short videos. It is, however, Maimonides continues, it is, however, right that we should examine the scriptural context by the intellect after having acquired a knowledge of demonstrative science. Beautiful. Beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? That's awesome. We don't just put our faith in words. We have demonstration. Talk about demonstration. I think about Paul. When he was in his letter to the Corinthians, where he's like, I don't come with just words. I come with the demonstration of the power. Okay, so we need to come with demonstration, not just with words. How you got this all the time, right? You got the gish galloping, shotgun fallacy going on all the time. I see it when it comes to flat earthers. Not every flat earther, but most. It seems like most of them. It's like just words. Okay, so show me, like, let's talk about, critical thinking here, present some evidence. So Maimonides has presented a lot of evidence so far. We have spent about almost 2 hours here going through the evidence. And what is the evidence? Well, he showed how the scriptures do not always mean what you think it means. He's presented different examples of that. Okay, so I love this. This is awesome. It is, however, right. It is, however, right that we should examine the scriptural texts by the intellect after having acquired a knowledge of demonstrative science. I'm going to show you guys those videos, and that's demonstrative science right there, guys. It'll be right there in front of your face in just a little bit. And of true hidden meaning of prophecies. And of the true hidden meaning of prophecies. But if one has obtained some knowledge in this matter, he must not preach on it, as I stated in my commentary on the Mishnah, and our sages said distinctly from the beginning of the book to this place, after the account of the sixth day of creation, it is, quote, the glory of God to conceal a thing, unquote. We have thus clearly stated our opinion. It is, however, part of the divine plan that everyone who has obtained some perfection transmit it to some other persons. See, this is really what my whole thing is. This is my drive. You know, I love this kind of stuff. I love coming across revelations and knowledge and all these blessings. I just love, I find something, I find something new. I find something fresh. It's like I'm just itching to share it. I just love to share. God blesses us so that we can bless other people. And this is what I believe that Maimonides is saying here. It is, however, part of the divine plan that everyone who has obtained some perfection transmit it to some other persons, as will be shown in the chapter on prophecy. It is, therefore, impossible for a scholar to possess knowledge of these problems, whether it be through his own researches or through his master's teaching, without communicating part of that knowledge to others. And it cannot be done in clear words. It must be done sparingly by way of hints. This reminds me of Yeshua, right? The parables. We find in the words of some of our sages numerous hints and notes of this kind, but mixed up with the words of others and with other subjects. In treating of these mysteries, as a rule, I quote as much as contains the principal idea and leave the rest for those who are worthy of it. Secondly, the prophets employ homonymous terms and use words that are not meant to be understood in their ordinary signification, but are only used because of some other meaning which they admit. Quote, a rod of an almond tree, in parenthesis, shaked, because of the words which follow, for I will hasten. It's Jeremiah 1, verses 11 and 12. As will be shown in the chapter on prophecy. According to the same principle, Ezekiel, in the account of the divine chariot, employs, as we have stated, the term hashmal, Ezekiel 1:4, also regal egal, verse 7, nahusat kalal. In similar terms, Zechariah likewise adopts this method and says, and the mountains were mountains of Nehoshet, brass, and the like. After these two remarks, I will proceed to the chapter which I have promised. Okay, so the next chapter is chapter 30. And he's going to go into some very interesting things here. Like there's a difference between first and beginning. And he's going to go into the whole thing about the creation narrative here. And we'll read a few pages of that when we get back. Hannah's going to play some live music for us. We'll read those pages when we get back. We'll talk a little bit about the creation narrative, and I'll show you those videos that is demonstrative science, as Maimonides would call it, of refraction. All right, so here's Hannah. Well, thank you, Hannah. That's beautiful, beautiful as always. Thank you for blessing us with your talent. Yeah, okay. So, I'm going to read two more pages from Maimonides' book called the Guide for the Perplexed. Very interesting, as you can see. I'm going to read two more pages, and then I'm going to show you three videos. I think it's a very good demonstration of how refraction works. All right, so let's get into this. This is from the book written by Maimonides over 800 years ago. Okay, so again, he doesn't have all the information that we have today in regards to the science of things and measurements and all. He doesn't have all this kind of information. Some things we do know by what he says, and that is that he knows that the Earth is a globe. Okay, NASA didn't deceive him. Okay, he knows the Earth is a globe. Okay, and he knows that much of the scriptures are figurative. In fact, I in my studies here in recent days, I've run across a rabbi who said that he believes that Maimonides says that almost everything before Abraham is figurative and not literal. I don't think I think that's a little bit of a hyperbole. I think that Maimonides does believe that there are some literal things in there, but yeah, I found that in my own studies, and I've been saying that for a long time. For those of you who are familiar with this channel, the more and more I study Genesis, the more I look into it, the more I look into all of the historicity and the evidence that we have behind it, the more I do say that the first several chapters of Genesis is figurative, or spiritual, symbolic, metaphorical, allegorical, if you want to put it that way. Yeah, and Maimonides, again, one of the greatest scholars of the Hebrew text in history, also seems to be leaning that way. He says that way. He said much of that in what we just read in the past couple hours. I'll read two more pages, and then we'll get into it. So if you have any questions or comments, even prayer requests, just please leave that in the live chat, and we'll get back to that. We'll get back to that shortly. Okay. Michael says, Sir, you said shaked as if to shake something. It is the Hebrew word, okay, meaning watchful. Love you, brother. Keep up the great teachings. Okay, I didn't pronounce it right. Yes, thank you very much, Michael. C3, I believe this is probably, speaking of Hannah's live music, says amazing. And Steven says just wonderful. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Blessings. Blessings to y'all. Okay, let's start this. This is chapter 30, and I'm reading actually page 342, chapter 30. Maimonides writes, there is a difference between first and the beginning, or principle. The latter exists in the thing of which it is the beginning, or coexists with it. It need not precede it. For example, the heart is the beginning of the living being. The element is the beginning of that which it is the basis. The term first is likewise applied to things of this kind, but it is also employed in cases where precedence is in time alone is to be expressed, and the thing which precedes is not the beginning or the cause of the thing that follows. For example, we say A was the first inhabitant of this house. After him came B. That is not to imply that A is the cause of B inhabiting the house. In Hebrew, tahila is used in the sense of first. When God first spake to Hosea chapter 1, verse 1, and the beginning is expressed by reshit, derived from rosh, head. The principal part of the living being as regards position. The universe has not been created out of an element that preceded it in time, since time itself formed part of the creation. Let me read that again. The universe has not been created out of an element that preceded it in time, since time itself formed part of the creation. Wow. Simple but profound at the same time. For this reason, Scripture employs the term Bereshit in a principle in which the bet is a preposition denoting in. So bet, the first letter there, bet, from the Bereshit, means in. The true explanation of the first verse of Genesis is as follows. In creating a principle, God created the beings above and the things below, unquote. This explanation is in accordance with the theory of the creation. We find that some of our sages have reported to have held the opinion that time existed before the creation. But this report is very doubtful because the theory that time cannot be imagined with the beginning has been taught by Aristotle, as I showed you, and is objectionable. Those who have made this assertion have been led to it by a saying of one of our sages in reference to the terms one day, a second day. Taking these terms literally, let me just stop here for a second, because this is I mentioned this before last week actually. Where in Genesis chapter 1, you have, in the English it says the first day, right? And then the second day. But in the Hebrew, instead of Rishon day, it says Echad day, which means one day, and then second day. Okay, so it's not the way it seems in the English. Anyways, moving on here, taking these terms literally, the author of that saying asked, what determined the first day? Since there was no rotating sphere and no sun. So what's this rotating sphere, by the way? So would that be? Does it seem? Is it as it seems that Maimonides is saying that the earth is a rotating sphere? Is that what it means? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know what you think of that in the live chat. Because what Maimonides is saying here is that day one is timeless. Basically what I said last week. Day one is timeless because there is no measurement of time. There's no time because there's no sun. Or the sun existed on day one. We'll get into that. You see, the whole creation narrative of Genesis chapter 1 is very complicated. There are so many different interpretations. And there's so much of the Dunning-Kruger effect going on in people who read it and they think they know. They're so confident. They're 1,000% confident that they know what it means. Anybody who's confident like that, even close to 100% confident that they know what Genesis chapter 1 is talking about, I guarantee you they don't know. They don't know. Because it is a lot more complicated than you think. Let me just kind of jump ahead here a little bit. So I mentioned this months ago when we were doing the Flat Earth debate with a couple other gentlemen, okay? So, and that was one of the things, again, another deflection. It's like, what about the sun? What about the sun on day 4? How can there be a sun on day 4 and, whatever? So what does that got to do with the shape of the earth anyway? Nothing, absolutely nothing. You're talking about cosmology and this kind of stuff. However, here's the thing. Day 4, it says, "Let there be lights in the sky, and let it be for the measurement of time," basically for days and seasons and such. So that means that the first 3 days there was no measurement of time. So the fourth day would have been as the first day, because there's no measurement of time. If you don't have anything to measure time, then there's no time. There's no way to measure it. It might be all instant, or it might be all quadrillions of years. There's no measurement of time. So you cannot say day 1, day 2, day 3 are 24-hour days, because you're measuring time when there was no measurement of time. It's like saying, okay, can you go to the lumber yard and cut me, get a 2x4 and cut it. I want a 5 tuka length 2x4. So what is that? Well, there is no measurement of that. So you can't cut it. When you don't have anything to measure it by, there's no measurement. And you can't just assume or guess or presume. So, and then you got these people that they take Genesis chapter 1 so literally, so literally and chronologically, like Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 comes before Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, and that comes before Genesis chapter 1 verse 3. Well, yeah, it does on paper, but so if Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 comes before anything else, then it says God created the heavens and the earth. Now, according to the scriptures, the sun and the moon and all of the stars are included in the heavens. So that means the sun was created right in verse 1. Again, do not fall victim to any Dunning-Kruger teacher that tells you that they know exactly 100% certain how it went down in Genesis chapter 1. Oh yeah, let's just continue here with what Maimonides is saying. So he's talking about those who made this assertion have been led to it by a saying of one of our sages in reference to the terms one day, a second day. Taking these terms literally, the author of that saying asked what determined the first day, since there was no rotating sphere and no sun. In other words, it sounds to me like it's talking about the rotation of the earth and the sun to measure it. Like, well, there goes a day. Oh, there goes a day. So there's no rotating sphere and no sun on the first day. So how can you say that it's chronological in any way? How can you say that it's one 24-hour period or 12-hour period or 1,000-year period or 1,000,000-year period? Who knows? That's really the bottom line here, is what I'm saying. Genesis, okay, this is where I'm coming from. Genesis chapter 1 seems to me to be more of a theological exposition as opposed to a historical exposition. In other words, Genesis chapter 1 seems to paint a picture of a theological concept rather than telling us chronologically what happened historically. Like, okay, first of all, was the heaven and the earth actually created in verse 1, and did that precede verse 2, and did verse 2 precede verse 3? And if so, then everything was created in verse 1 anyway, including the earth, the sun, the moon, and everything, okay? Because that's all included in the word heavens. You can see that in the other parts of the scripture. And then day one, it says in day one, God defines what a day is. He says he called the light day. What's the light? It's or in the Hebrew, which, yes, it can mean it can mean daylight. It can mean physical light. Yes, it can. But it can also mean lots of other things. It can mean knowledge. It can mean revelation. It can mean happiness and blessing. Anything that light could symbolize. Anything that light symbolizes and speaks of. Knowledge, wisdom, revelation, beauty, glory, the Word of God. So the very fact that if God said, "Let there be light," that very word itself is light. Nothing to do with, what we think it is. So in regards to the rotating sphere, Stephen says, to me, it's a ball turning in the space provided for it. Yes, thank you, Stephen. Okay. Maimonides continues by saying, and continues as follows, Scripture uses the term one day. Again, keep in mind, it says one day, it doesn't say first day. Again, please, it's not very simple. Genesis chapter 1 is a very complicated chapter. Super complicated. Obviously, we have Jewish scholars and rabbis that have been arguing about it for thousands of years. Who's to say, I know exactly what it means? I think that Genesis chapter 1, for the most part, is just a theological picture, symbolic, metaphoric, allegoric. Okay? Scripture uses the term one day. Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Shimon, said, hence we learn that the divisions of time have existed previously. Rabbi Abuha said, hence we learn that God built worlds and again destroyed them. So that is another theory, by the way. And that kind of goes along with the Genesis gap theory. The gap theory is like billions of years between Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. I don't personally buy that theory. I'm not into it, but people have that theory. Hey, you're free to adopt these kind of theories, but I think this is what he's talking about. Hence, we learn that God built worlds and then destroyed them, and again destroyed them. This latter exposition is still worse than the former, so it doesn't sound like Maimonides doesn't like that either. Consider the difficulty which these two rabbis found in the statement that time existed before the creation of the sun. So again, you get these people who say, the sun wasn't created until day 4. What they're, especially these flat earthers, I know what they're saying. They're saying, well, look, the earth was created first and it's flat, even though it doesn't say it's flat. It's flat. And the sun was created afterwards. So the sun is like a little accessory that goes around the earth. No. Because what you're doing is you are interjecting your chronology, before day 4, when there is no chronology before day 4, especially because we don't have a sun. We don't have these luminaries to measure time. Maimonides continues by saying, we shall undoubtedly soon remove this difficulty unless these two rabbis intended to infer from the scriptural text that the divisions of time must have existed before creation, and thus adopted the theory of the eternity of the universe. But every religious man rejects this. The above saying is, in my opinion, certainly of the same character as that of Rabbi Eliezer, quote, whence were the heavens created, unquote, etc. Chapter 26. In short, in these questions, do not take notice of the utterances of any person. I told you that the foundation of our faith is the belief that God created the universe from nothing, that time did not exist previously, but was created. Got to highlight that one. Time did not exist previously, but was created, for it depends on the motion of the sphere, and the sphere has been created. You must know that the particle et in the phrase et hashamayim, the et haaretz, the heavens and the earth, signifies together with. Our sages have explained the word in the same sense in many instances. Accordingly, they assume that God created with the heavens everything that the heavens contain. Ah, there you go. Right there. Right. So they assume that God created with the heavens everything that the heavens contain, and with the earth everything the earth includes. They further say that the simultaneous creation of the heavens and the earth is implied in the words, I called unto them, they stand up together, Psalm 48. Consequently, all things were created together, but were separated from each other successively. Our sages illustrated this by the following simile. We sow various seeds at the same time. Some spring forth after 1 day, some after 2, some after 3 days, although all have been sown at the same time. According to this interpretation, which is undoubtedly correct, the difficulty is removed, which led Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Shimon, to utter the above saying, and consisted in the doubt as to the thing by which the first day, the second, and the third were determined. In Bereshit Rabbah, our sages, speaking of the light created on the first day, according to the scriptural account, say as follows. These lights of the luminaries mentioned in the creation of the fourth day are the same that were created on the first day. Isn't that interesting? So we have, according to Maimonides, we have these rabbis who say that they believe that the light, the sun and all this that was created on the fourth day, actually existed on the first day. They were created on the first day. Okay, that's what this is saying. But were only fixed in their places on the fourth day. In other words, it was only on the fourth day. They were assigned their jobs. Basically, they were fixed in their places, and they were assigned their places. This is your purpose. But according to this, again, this is their interpretation. This is their interpretation of it. This is their theory on this. According to this, all of that was created on the first day. It was all created on the first day. It wasn't until the fourth day. It's like, okay, you guys, okay, so let the light be for signs, for days and seasons. Okay. And the light of these luminaries was assigned certain tasks. Isn't this something? This is amazing. The meaning of the first verse has thus been clearly stated. We must further consider the term aretz is a homonym and is used in a general and a peculiar sense, a particular sense. It has more general signification when used of everything within the sphere of the moon. That is, of all the four elements, and is used in particular of one of them, of the lowest, namely the earth. Okay. By the way, guys, before you forget, if you like any of this kind of talk, Make sure you leave a like. Make sure you follow if you're not following. Make sure you subscribe before we go any further here, just before I forget. Yeah, very, very interesting. This is evident from the passage, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the surface of the deep. And the wind of God moved upon the face of the waters. The term earth mentioned here and in the first verse includes all the four elements, while further on it is said, quote, and God called the dry land earth, unquote, Genesis 1:10. It is also important to notice that the words, quote, and God called a certain thing a certain name, unquote, are invariably intended to distinguish one thing from others which are called by the common noun, by the same common noun. I explain, therefore, the first verse in Genesis thus: in creating the principle, God created the things above and those below. Aretz, in this verse, denotes the things below, or the four elements, and in the verse, and God called the dry land earth, it signifies the element earth. This subject is now made clear. The four elements indicated, according to our explanation in the term earth, in the first sense, are mentioned first after the heavens. For there are named Aretz, earth, Ruach, air, Maim, water, and Hoshek, fire. By Hoshek, the element fire is meant, nothing else. Quote, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire, unquote, that is Deuteronomy 4:36, and, quote, when you heard the voice out of the midst of the Hoshek, the unquote, darkness, again, quote, Hoshek, this darkness shall be hid in his secret places. A fire not blown shall consume him. That is Job 20, verse 26. The element fire is called Hushbek because it is not luminous. It is only transparent. For if it were luminous, we should see at night the whole atmosphere in flames. The order of the four elements, according to the natural position, is here described, namely, first earth, above it water, air close to the water, and fire above air. For by placing air over water, Hoshek, fire, which is upon the face of the deep, is undoubtedly above air. It was here necessary to use the term Ruach Elohim, because air is described here as in motion, and the motion of the air is, as a rule, ascribed to God. And there went forth, quote, and there went forth a wind from the Lord, unquote. This Numbers 11:31. Quote, you did blow with your wind, unquote, Exodus 15:10. And, quote, and the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, unquote. As the first Hoshek, which denotes the element fire, is different from the Hoshek mentioned further on in the sense of darkness, the latter is explained and distinguished from the former according to our explanation in the words, and darkness he called night. And this is now clear. Okay. Okay. So let's just do a little bit of a recap here, and I'll answer your questions here in the live chat. We'll get that video up playing here in just a moment as well. It is getting a little bit on the later side too. So, okay. So in the creation story, if you take it literal, let's just kind of take a peek at this. If you take this literal, Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So we have so many different interpretations of this. I'm going to go through a couple of them. There's probably hundreds. I don't know. I haven't counted. I've heard so many different things from so many different sources. And again, the bottom line, what I'm doing here is I'm presenting different points of view. And I'm only doing this to kind of expand our perspective, to understand that there are different ways that this can be interpreted. So I'm not saying one interpretation is perfect over another. I'm not saying that. I'm just merely presenting different points of view. And basically, you can look at the different points of view presented and judge for yourself. So the first way of interpreting this that comes to mind is what I said before, is the Genesis gap theory. And this is a very literal and chronological kind of reading of the text, where it's like, Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 comes before Genesis chapter 1 verse 2, and that comes before Genesis chapter 1 verse 3, and it's very strictly chronological. I personally do not buy that, but that particular theory goes like this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So what they say is, so right there, everything was created. The heavens, which means everything, the sun, the moon, all the stars and everything, and the earth was created and everything. And so the theory goes like this. It's like, how can God create something that's not perfect? So everything's got to be perfect to begin with. And then it's like, and the earth was without form and void. Then it's like, oh, wait a second. What happened between Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and Genesis chapter 1, verse 2? So they shoehorn billions of years in there, and they say, well, it must have been two different worlds that was created, or God must have recreated it, because for somewhere down the line, it became without form and void. It was destroyed somehow. That's the theory. Again, I don't buy that theory, but that's one theory. And using the idea that every verse comes before the next, like in a chronological sequence, that would tell you that the first day, the second day, and the third day are all days that exist in eternity, because there's no way for days or years to be measured until the fourth day. So basically, time didn't begin until the fourth day, or basically, like how Maimonides put it, it sounds like he believes that the sun and the moon and all that stuff that was apparently created on the fourth day was actually created on the first day, and they weren't. It's just they were not assigned their places or their jobs yet until the fourth day, and they were so. Whatever case you want to look at it, I would say if it's a chronological thing where it's like the first day happens before the second day, which happens before the third day, which happens before the fourth. It's chronological, like steps: 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. If you want to look at it that way, the first 3 days could be instant. They could have all happened instantly, or they could have happened they could have been infinite days. Why? Because again, there was no measurement of time before day 4. There was no measurement of time. Last week, I presented the theory that every day can be eternal without end. Okay? So, in the theory goes like this. So, by the way, it's interesting that the second day, every other day God saw that it was good, and all that kind of stuff, right? But the second day, it doesn't say that. It does say that in the Septuagint manuscripts. So again, we have differences in manuscripts. So if we go over to the Septuagint, let me just do this. Those videos are coming very shortly, by the way, guys. So much to cover here. I'm just going to cover the first few days. I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. Then I'll get into those videos. I'll show you those videos. Okay, where's it now? Yeah, that's why. Okay. Let me show you guys. I'm going to show you guys this. Just a second. Just trying to get this all situated properly on the screen for you to see this. And this is a thing too. I mean, let's not get too hyper literal here in any of these kind of interpretations. Why? Because we have so many variants among the manuscripts. There's so many differences amongst the different manuscripts. I mean, we got the Masoretic, we got the Samaritan, we got the Septuagint, and those are just the three main families of manuscripts, let alone the other things like the Dead Sea Scrolls and other things. Like what did Josephus quote? What text did he use? And many would argue that it was a different text than what we have today. Or same with Philo. Same with other ancient writings. They quote Genesis, but it's like, that's different than what we have today. So there are different manuscripts. My point is this: let's not get too hyper literal. Let's not get too legalistic when it comes to, well, it says this, and it's got to mean this and that. It's got to mean exactly how I interpret it. And unless if you don't interpret it the way I interpret it, then you're, people condemn other people for not interpreting things the way they interpret it. So, so here's a comparison. Again, I'm not going to get into too much of this, but this is interesting. Check this out. Here's a comparison. On the left-hand side, you have the English translation of the Masoretic Hebrew. Okay. On the right-hand side, you got an English translation of the Greek Septuagint. The Greek Septuagint is arguably hundreds of years, if not up to 1,000 years, older than the Masoretic. And many people will tell you that the Septuagint, the New Testament authors quote from the Septuagint more than the Masoretic. Okay, that's a huge study all by itself. But anyways, so first century Christians, the early church fathers, even the New Testament authors, some have argued that if you check it out, like New Testament quotes of Old Testament passages, I hate to say Old Testament, but it's Tanakh passages, match up frequently with the Septuagint and not with the Masoretic text. Just saying. That's the reason why, where is it? I got it around here somewhere. That's the reason why the Orthodox Bible, especially the Orthodox Study Bible, translates from the Septuagint text, not the Masoretic text. Anyway, so check this out. So on the left, you have your Masoretic text, which was finalized, they say, around the first millennium, 900 AD, something like that. Okay, the Septuagint was translated in beginning about 250 BC. Okay, and it took a while for all of it to be translated. But anyways, look at the difference here. So this is verse 6. So verse 6 in the Masoretic compared to the Septuagint. So in the Masoretic, it says, then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the water. By the way, my understanding of the word firmament is sky. It tells you later he called the firmament sky. Okay. It's just, when you read firmament, think sky. The waters from the water is the clouds above from the waters beneath. Okay. The waters above the firmament per se, because there's different firmaments, just like how you look at in the sky today. Okay, you say, wow, the clouds are up there in the sky. Like the clouds are like the ceiling, right? The ceiling of the sky, so to speak. Those are the waters above. The waters below are the oceans and the lakes and the rivers and such. It's the division there, okay? But the sky, the firmament, can also be talking about the sky beyond the external, not from the local around the earth, but rather the greater firmament, if you will, the greater sky, which is the outer space. Okay. So anyways, so we got the division of the waters from the waters, from the clouds, from the waters above, from the waters below. But look at this. Look at this. Let it divide the waters from the waters. And it stops there. In the Septuagint, it's got something else. It says, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the water, and let there be a division from between water and water, and it was so. It doesn't say that in the Masoretic. And it was so. It doesn't say that. Verse 7. Thus God, this is the Masoretic text, English translated from the Hebrew Masoretic. Thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. Now that says it was so down there. Now this one is different. This is the Septuagint. It says, and God made the firmament, and God divided between the water which was under the firmament and the water which was above the firmament. And it doesn't say it was so here. So it swapped it, right? So the first, in verse 6, the Septuagint says, and it was so, and the Masoretic doesn't say that. But verse 7, at the end of it, the Masoretic says it was so, and the Septuagint doesn't say that. So it's like different. But check this out. See how much different verse 8 is here. Verse 8 in the Masoretic text is just small. Verse 8 in the Septuagint is much bigger. So verse 8 in the Masoretic text says, and God called the firmament heaven, right? Or in other texts would say sky. So the evening and the morning were the second day. And it leaves it just like that. Boom. Okay? That's it. That's it for the second day. So in the Septuagint it says, and God called the firmament heaven, and God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. So the whole phrase, and God saw that it was good, is missing from the Masoretic Hebrew text. Maimonides has a really weird, it's a really interesting idea of why it's missing. Because the firmament is such a abstract idea anyway, and that's basically the reason why it's missing from how he puts it. But I'm not gonna read all that stuff that Maimonides says about that. But so here's the point. There are different manuscripts that add and take away. What does that tell us? That tells us that the text is corrupted. It's not perfect. So let's not get too overly hyper-literal or legalistic when it comes to reading this or believing any specific doctrine about this. So the first 3 days could have been eternal days. They could have happened like that. Why wouldn't they? Can't God create it all just like that? Why did he? So here's a few questions. Anybody who believes that the first 3 days were 24-hour days has a problem, because how can you measure something that can't be measured before you have the means to measure it, which only existed on day 4? Okay, and then there's the fact that you have because day is defined as or, which or by itself speaks of the Word of God. So The word can be day. The word itself can be a day, not time. And I was saying this last week. So all 7 days can exist simultaneously. The light is still shining. The light of God, the or of the first day, is still shining. The waters are still being divided as the water cycle is happening. The waters are evaporating and it's going up into the waters above, the clouds, and condensing and falling down as precipitation. It's still happening. It didn't stop. The grass is still growing. The herb yielding, seed is still being grown in the field as per creation. The animals are still being produced. It says in Psalm 139 that you basically that God knits together the baby in the womb. Man is still being created. Day 6 is still happening. Day 5 is still happening. Day 4 is still happening. Day 3, day 2, day 1 don't have time anyway, so they're probably all still happening anyway. So what I'm saying is, let's get out of the mindset that we have chronological sequence that day 1 has to close before day 2. And so somebody argues, well, it says, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. There was evening, there was morning the second day. Well, does that mean that the day actually ended? I know that's the way it sounds in our little finite human minds when we think of day as we know it today, as we know it in modern times, or as we have defined day, as you have a day of cycle, and then there's night, then there's day, and then there's night. But is that really what it's talking about? Again, how can day 1, day 2, day 3 have a chronological sequence without the chronological sequence of time until time was measured in day 4? And as Maimonides has pointed out, creation, the sun had to have been created first for any time to be measured at all, for any time to exist. So and then here's the question too. So why did God take a whole day? Now let me just go back here one step. So let me ask a question to anybody who's kind of mulling this over in your mind. Today, does the or of God exist? Does the light of God shine today? I hope you say yes. So yes, there is day. Yom, there is or. Okay? So the light of God is shining right now. Yes. Now let me ask you another question. Does darkness exist too? So I think most of you would say yes. I would say yes. We have light and we have darkness at the same time. And there was evening and there was morning. And we have God's light, God's or, and we also have darkness. We have the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness existing at the same time. You see what I'm getting at? So when it says there was evening and there was morning, is that telling us a chronology that can't exist because there's no chronological sequence before day 4? Or is that telling us that there's just two things that exist? And there's light and there's darkness. They both exist. In other words, there is a place where that word, that yom, that or went out, the light of God, that is going out, that exists. And there's also a place that it doesn't exist. There's evening, there's morning. Heaven, there's hell. Or hell and heaven. I'm going to put it respectively. So again, we shouldn't be so overly simple as if it were like some kind of Sunday school children's book. Like, oh yeah, it's like one day, one 24-hour day, and oh yeah, there's evening and morning. Nah, I think that it's a lot deeper than that. I think it's a lot more involved in that. I think it's a lot more complicated than that. And again, after studying this, I'll tell you something. Back in 1992, as far as I remember, it was 1992, if not 1993, but I think it was 1992. I purchased, I'll show you. Actually, I got it right here. Hold on a second. Just give me a second. Like, literally, like 15 seconds. Hold on. Right here. I purchased this book in 1992. This very same book, okay? And I sat down with my Hebrew lexicon and my Strong's and all this kind of stuff that I have. And I turned to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and I started studying the Hebrew. It's 31 years ago. And I translated it. I made my own translation, starting at Genesis chapter 1, 31 years ago. I tell you, when you do it that way and you look up every single word and you put every single word through the lexicon and through your brain, through your mind, and think about all the possibilities, it really, you really start thinking. You really start getting a little bit more, yeah, maybe this is not as simple as I think it might have been. So, oops, drop something there. Yeah, so here's the thing. At the end of the day, Genesis chapter 1 could very well be a theological allegory and not a historical thing. What's the purpose of Genesis chapter 1? Really, the purpose is just telling us about the 6-day work week and the Sabbath rest. And here's a question too, for those of you who think that this is 24-hour days. What happened? What did God do on the 8th day? If you really believe this is 24-hour days, what did God do on the 8th day? What about the 10th day? So if this is a week, like 24-hour day, 7-day week, then that means he should have went back to, after Shabbat, he would have went back to day 1, right? And he would have said, "Let there be light" again, right? Or what happened? Did he stop altogether? So if he stopped altogether, if he stopped at day 7, then that's not a 24-hour day. That would have been a 1,000-year day. You know what I'm getting at? So it's not to be looked at as a chronological, historical rendition of the account of time. Why would God take a day to make light anyway? Why would he take a whole day? And why would he be tired at the end? Why would he have to rest? These questions are for people who believe that the days are literal and 24 hours. If you don't believe that they're literal and you think they're allegorical, then this doesn't apply to you, because it can be allegorical. I mean, it can be very, the door is wide open. Heaven's the limit. Okay? Heaven's the limit if it's allegorical, which I think it is allegorical, symbolic, theological. So there's lots of questions. A lot of people don't think about this stuff. You have a problem, a big problem, if you make it into a 24-hour day. Even a 1,000-year period each day. Still a big problem. How did grass grow without the sun? But if they all existed at the same time, and it kind of sounds like that's where Maimonides is going there too. It's like they're all eternal days without, like, if they all exist at the same time, and it's continually happening as we speak. The universe is continually expanding. Things are continually being created on Earth, and the Shabbat is a spiritual state, as it sounds like it is in the New Testament anyway. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, to spiritualize completely and not rest on the, on the Sabbath. Don't get me wrong, because I think that a lot of Christians do that, and I think that the Torah has more than just an earthly application. I think it's got a spiritual application too. And you read about that in the book of Hebrews, how the people of God in the wilderness did not enter into his rest, into his Shabbat. And that sounds like an eternal day. There are a lot of questions. I didn't write them all down. It's just off the top of my head. I can probably go all night like this and asking more and more questions. But again, if this is allegorical and these days are spiritual days, and it's a theological thing, not a historical thing, it's a theological thing, not a historical chronological fact or facts, then you can say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's like a parable. It's like a story. The parables that Jesus told are not real. They're parables. If it's a real story, it's not a parable. Parable is a fictitious story that reflects a spiritual reality, like a vision from a prophet. We read about this, and we went through some of this in chapter 29 with Maimonides there, how he mentioned all these allegorical things. So, Michael asked a question: why does God tell Moshe in Exodus 20, verse 11, for in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day? Is he saying it was a literal 6/7 days? And this, so this is what I was getting at. So I don't think that that's the case. I think that it is a picture of the work week, but it's not, like, again, it's allegorical, it's an allegorical story from Genesis chapter 1 that has a real world application. So like, because we have that allegory in Genesis chapter 1, so now we can work 6 days a week and have Shabbat off, every week. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of problem with translating it, interpreting it as being literal. I think about, just a second here. I think about where is it now? Article on my website, ChristopherEnoch.org, speaking about figures of speech, and some stuff in there about, here it is right here. Serious business to assume that a figure of speech is literal. Let me just zoom in if I can here. To assume that a figure of speech is literal can lead to great error and evil. Consider, for example, Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Later on, witnesses who took it literally came forward to testify against Jesus, accusing him of saying that he was speaking literal of a literal temple. Right? So basically, those false witnesses were false because they took it literally. Well, he said he would tear the temple down in 3 days, raise it up. And then we got, this is my body, this is my blood, the cup, the contents. Is it the cup or the contents of it? Against all reasoning, Rome insists that, so this is what E.W. Bullinger says in his book, by the way. Rome, meaning the Roman Catholic Church, insists that this is literal, not a metaphor, that the host, the bread, is literally Christ's body. E.W. Bullinger puts it very well in his book, Figures of Speech Used in the Bible, in page 738 and 739. So E.W. Bullinger says, no perversion of language has been fraught with greater calamity to the human race. Tens of thousands have suffered martyrdom at the hands of Rome rather than believe the blasphemous fable forced into these words. The exquisite tortures of the Inquisition were invented to coerce the consciences of men and compel them to accept this lie. Luther himself was misled through his ignorance of this simple law of figurative language. In his controversy with Zwingli, he obstinately persisted in maintaining the literal sense of the figure and thus forced it to have a meaning which it never has. He thus led the whole of Germany into his error. For while his common sense rejected the error of transubstantiation, he fell into another and invented the figment of consubstantiation and fastened it upon the Lutheran Church to this day. What a solemn and instructive lesson as to the importance of a true understanding of figures of language, figures of speech. Yeah, so we should take it all seriously. We should take all this stuff seriously and really, really think about it. Really, really think about it before we buy into any particular doctrine. Now, the video that I was talking about, here it's just an awesome video. Love it. Talking about refraction. Okay, so everything you see is light that either is generated from, let's say, a light bulb or something like that, or light that's reflected off of other objects, and these photons go right straight into your eye. The light goes right straight to your eye, right? However, there are times when there is refraction, when light doesn't travel straight. You know what? I'm just thinking about something. There is another. Okay. 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 I'll show this one after. Let's get past this stuff here. Okay. So some of you may have seen videos of people who say, okay, so this city is across this lake, like for example, Chicago or something else like that. The city is across this lake, and you know, according to the curvature of the earth, you should not be able to see what we see, and you see the picture of it, and you can see, looks like the majority of the buildings and such. Looks like you can see a good part of it. If it's a honest video, you'll see that the bottom parts of the video are not very, they're distorted, either shrunken in size or distorted. What I've never seen a flat earther video. There might be some out there, I don't know, but I've never seen a flat earther actually take temperature of the water and of the surrounding, the atmospheric temperature, because that can make all the difference. How refraction works is you got light that travels through the air, okay, a beam of light. But if the air is, or whatever medium it's traveling through, it can travel through glass or plastic or water, okay? And if there's a density gradient to it, the beam of light will bend towards the denser medium. It's actually kind of slowing. It's like slowing down a little bit. It's bending towards the denser medium. So if you have water and you have something in the water, let's say, for example, sugar or something like that, if you put, I'll show you, there's another video. I wasn't thinking about showing this video, but I will show this one anyway too. Not much of it, but just a few seconds of it. You can check it out yourself. I'll let you know how to, the actual, maybe I should put the link in the description. But anyways, if you get an aquarium and you fill the bottom of it full of sugar and you put water in it and you let it sit for a while, you let it sit for so many hours or days, the water near the sugar is going to be more, it's going to be more dense because what's the words here? I'm getting tired, guys. It's what's that word? The sugar gets dissolved, into the water, and so the water closer to the sugar has a high. It's denser, and if you shine a laser through it, the laser light will bend down. So theoretically, actually, I've seen someone do this. They actually take like something and put like a curvature, like an arc over, like in the water, and the light goes over it, bends around it. This is why you see, oh, perfect, Stephen. Yes, like a mirage in the desert. This is a perfect, good example. So temperature can affect the beams of light. Temperature can cause the light to either bend down or bend up. Okay? It's always bending towards the denser medium. Towards the denser medium. So let's say the medium is air and you're in the desert. Okay? And let's say the sand is hot. Okay? And so when the air is hot, it's less dense, right? That's why heat rises. Right? So the sand is hot, or even on the road. You're traveling on the road. It can be hotter. The road can have a higher temperature than the actual air, because the road can be warmer than the actual air above it. So what happens is, because the air is warmer on the surface of the road, that means the air immediately above the road, or the sand in the desert, is denser. So you have like light from the sky is shining down on the road or on the sand. And once it gets towards the road, the heat from the road causes the air just above the road to be more dense, so it bends back up. So this is what causes the mirage, right? It's the refraction. You got the road, okay? And then if the road is hot, the air above it being cooler is more dense than it is right on the road. So the light, beams of light come down, shining down instead of shining on the road. They hit the hot air and they refract back up this way. And that's why when you look at the road, sometimes it looks like there's water on the road far ahead. Or in the desert, like how Stephen says here, the mirage. It looks like there's water. It looks like water because it looks like a reflection of the sky. And it looks like a reflection because the light is actually bending back up because of refraction. So you can have the opposite of that happening. Instead of the sky bending back up because the road is hot, you can have the road or water or anything like that being colder, substantially colder than the surrounding, than the air above it, and it won't go up, it will go down, bend down. So it will bend around the curvature. Okay? It bends around the curvature. That's why you see, like, for example, you notice how a lot of these flat earthers, they would post videos in cold water. If it's cold water, Lake Michigan on a cold, the water's very cold, as opposed to going to something like Lake Erie, where the water might be warmer, especially on a warmer day, on a hot summer day when the temperature of the water is warmer. You're not going to get that refraction, not as much anyway, because the water's warmer. I posted a video, by the way, on my Leveling Flat Earth series, a couple videos that was done. A good brother has a channel called The Amazing and Restless Planet, and he went over to Evangola State Park in New York on the shore of Lake Erie in June. Okay, it was a month where the sun's going to be shining a lot more than in the winter, and he took the measurement of the temperature of the water. Good for that. That's excellent. You don't really, again, I've never seen a flat earther do that because but he took the measurement, the temperature of the water and the temperature of the air above it, and then he shot his camera over the lake, and you could see just the tops of these huge buildings in Port Colborne, Ontario, Canada. You see just the tops of these buildings, and the top of it's like a big bridge. You can see just the tops of it, just peeking over the horizon. And as much as he can zoom in, it doesn't matter. You're not going to see it all. I've challenged flat earthers for months to go over, especially when the water is about the same temperature and the air about the same temperature as when he went. So go over there and prove him wrong. As far as I know, it's never ever happened. They never ever prove him wrong. So, anyways, here's a video of a gentleman. Now, this is on a video on a channel called TJ Wheats, I believe, if I can pronounce that correctly. Here's his channel for again, to give credit where credit's due. Okay, this is his channel. So he posted a video in which he put these objects on the far side of his driveway, and his driveway is curved. And it was during a hot day. He mentions, I think it was in the 90s. The air temperature was in the 90s, and so he put these objects on at the far end of his driveway, and then he took his camera and he put it down to the driveway where it's like you can just the curvature of the driveway hid some of the objects that he put over there. And then he poured water on the driveway to cool it down, and then you can see beyond, you can see over the curvatures, at least to a certain degree. Now, I think he said in the video that the temperature of the water wasn't like super cold. It wasn't like ice water. It was only like 60. I think he said in the 60s Fahrenheit. The water that he poured over that. So it wasn't like really cold water. So I suppose if he poured colder water on it, you could probably even see more. He's got a couple versions of this video. One is like the very raw form of the video where it's like unedited, really raw. And when I say really raw, it's really, really shaky and everything like that. I'm going to play that one first because it's unedited and you can see exactly what he did, how he did this. So here's part of the video here. So this dark object here that you see on the screen is his driveway. These are the objects that he's set up at the end of his driveway. Now what he's going to do is he's going to lower the camera down, and you'll see it cover part of this object. Okay, so he's going to lower it down so that part of the curvature of the driveway. Yeah, he's going to put it right down Okay. So you see that the driveway, the curvature of the driveway is hiding a good part of that object, okay? And now he's going to take some water and he's going to pour it on the hot driveway. And you watch what happens. Now, again, this is the unedited raw version of this video, so he does have an edited version, which is a lot faster than this video. I'm not going to play this whole video, but just so you see how he set it up. Okay, and I would expect in a moment here he's going to pour water on the hot driveway. Apparently, this was a hot day. What he said, the ambient temperature was in the 90s, and the water was like in the 60s. Temperature-wise, Fahrenheit. So watch this. Watch this. He pours the cold water on the driveway, and look. Now you can see. Now you can see what you couldn't see before. You can see kind of around the curvature of the driveway. You can see the red stripe and the yellow stripe. Okay, let me just back this up a little bit. I'm just going to back this up. So he started out like. So it started out like that. You can barely see the yellow stripe and not the red at all. So then he poured the water on it to cool the driveway off. He pours the water on it to cool the driveway off, and then you can see around the curvature of the driveway, at least to a certain degree. You can see the yellow appearing, and then the red starting to appear as well. Now, of course, as the driveway starts to heat up again, then it will kind of start to hide those objects. So he goes and he pours. Let me just kind of fast forward here because he pours some more water on it. Where is it now? You know what? I'm going to go to the other video. I'm going to go to the other video because it's a lot faster. Okay. So here's the other video. Here's the one that he cut out all the, just waiting around for him to get water or whatever he was doing there. So here it is again, seeing over the curve of my driveway. Here's the horizon. So the water is running down his driveway, cooling the driveway off, and then you can see over the curvature of the driveway. Okay, this is how refraction works. This is how refraction works. A little more water flows down the driveway. So the water is cooling the driveway off, which is making the air more dense near the driveway, which is causing the refraction to the light to bend around the driveway. Okay. He did another one of those. That was that was an older video, like a few years ago. And so just a few days ago, he did that kind of same thing again. So here's another one here. Seeing over the curve of my driveway again. Okay, so wait a second here. Full view of the of display before lowering the camera. So it looks like he's got a brick there. He's got some things here. Okay, so that's what was at the end of his driveway, and then he lowered the camera. The camera's lowered, the brick and the colored strips become obstructed. Okay, so they're obstructed by the curvature. And then he pours the cold water again. Cold water, and see what's going on there, right? See that? Now you can see. You can see around the curvature, at least to a certain extent. Here's the thing, like, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking if you can see that far, if the light bends that much over just a short driveway, how much more would that bend around like 30, 40 miles? You know? Like, really. The slope of slanted strip appears, it says here, to change. Okay. Yeah, he did a blink test. I'm going to play that as well. This is interesting. Okay, yeah, so he shows you like the before and the after. Pours more water on it. See, like that's there you go. Demonstration. Talk about Maimonides talking about demonstrative science. There you go right there. Demonstrative science right there. That is how you can see around a curve. Now, yeah, so next time you see a video by a flat earther that's trying to prove that the earth is flat by producing a video, you need to ask a few questions. How high are you? What's the observer height? Because that makes all the difference too. I mean, if you're up higher, you can see a lot more. I mean, if you're close to the water and the buildings or whatever are also very close to the water. Like I saw a video before where the buildings were like up. He doesn't tell you this, but you check it out on an elevation map, and the actual buildings are like up over 100 feet above the surface surface of the water. He doesn't tell you that, but they're up really high. So that's one thing you got to do. You got to ask about the elevation of the object in relation, relative to the water surface, and the elevation of the camera relative to the water surface, and the temperature of the water, and the temperature of the surrounding air. Those are the things you got to take into consideration. I find it really interesting that flat earthers never really produced videos. I haven't, maybe there are, I don't know, but I haven't seen any videos of looking over, Lake Erie, because Lake Erie would probably be a lake that is warmer than other lakes. On a hot summer day, when the water is at a fairly warm temperature, looking over Lake Erie, I mean, you should be able to see all the cottages and all the, houses on the Canadian side. Should be easy. If it's flat, if it's really flat, you should easily be able to see it, especially if the water is warm. All right. Let me see. One more video. Here's the blink. I got two more videos to play. Short little one here, 29 seconds of the same gentleman, just showing before and after pictures of one of his driveway tests here. Just a second here. Okay. Yeah, another thing too, one more thing, and that is the demonstration of laser going through water. Where do we go? Yeah, here we go. Just give me a second. Ads. So this particular video is by the Action Labs. Some of you might be familiar with Action Labs. So he spends a good amount of time talking about refraction. Okay. You can see this in Action Lab. So let me just stop here for a second. So what he's doing here, this is like he's got a cube here, a transparent cube, almost like an aquarium. On the bottom, he's got like a sugar. I think it's sugar that he's using in water. So the liquid is denser. There's a gradient of density from up top, and as you get closer to the sugar, it gets dense. It gets more dense as you get closer. So you watch this laser light, see how it behaves here in this dense, this gradient of density. Watch it bend. See that? It's bending right down. It's bending right down. So this particular demonstration is almost like demonstrating our atmosphere, right? Because the air is denser as you go down. There's higher pressure, at lower elevations as opposed to higher elevations. At the top of Mount Everest, you don't have as high pressure as you have, in a lower elevation. That's why a lot of people, unfortunately, some people have died because of that as well. They don't have enough oxygen up there. And then you add that to the fact that you have something like cold water, okay, which makes it even denser. And this is what causes the refraction. You can see around the curvature, which it makes it appear as if you are seeing something on the other side as if it's flat, but it's not. So there you go. There's a few videos. I'll just quickly go through some of the live chat here. And yeah, once again, those of you who are not subscribed, please subscribe, like. And every single day we do a live stream, by the grace of God, every single day. Normally it's at 7 p.m. Eastern, except for Saturdays we go live at 2 p.m. Eastern. Okay. Yeah, so let's see what we got here. Michael says, talk about refraction makes me think of the movie Paycheck, where they can see into the future by bending the light. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Okay. All right. So, yeah, I'm going to wrap it up now. This is, wow. Time flies, as I say, time flies when you're having fun. We're going on towards 4 hours. I didn't really plan on spending so much time here, but so much to talk about, so much to show you guys. And so, yeah, awesome. So we're doing this every day, okay? On Sundays, we have been focusing on this kind of topic, the same topic, flat Earth, the shape of the Earth, all that kind of thing. Normally on weekdays, what we're doing is we're going through the historical ancient documents of, we're reading through Josephus now, Flavius Josephus, and on Saturday is kind of like a real, Saturday at 2 p.m. is a little bit more of a casual, kind of an open floor kind of a live stream. So anyways, if you guys have any suggestions as to live guests or people that would like to come on as guests, let me know. Christopher Enoch at protonmail.com. Looking for people, of course, that are half decent at least, not just trolls wasting anybody's time. Looking for people that are half decent. Let me know. All right, guys. Corey's always around with some jokes, that's for sure. Good to see you, Corey. All right. Anyways, thanks again, everyone. Thank you for your questions and your comments. Love you guys. Much love to you guys. Seek the Lord says, thank you, Brother Christopher. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Seek the Lord. Blessings. Bless you more. Michael says, thank you. This has been eye-opening. A lot to think about. Thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad that you were blessed. Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks again. Love you guys. And I'll see you guys tomorrow, Lord willing, 7 p.m. Eastern. Always going through the live chat. Got comments I'd like to respond to and everything like that. And again, from time to time, we're having live guests. I'm looking at getting more guests on and really interesting people. Let me know what you think. Stephen says, blessings to you all. Thank you very much, Stephen. Blessings multiplied back to you. Thank you. See you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. As always, I pray the Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face to shine upon you. Lift up his countenance upon you. And give you wonderful, wonderful shalom. Amen, amen.